Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if NEZU saw something in Deku Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story InsomNyaC from 𝐴3. So let's start the video. This could be a problem. NEZU flicked his ears back in annoyance, enjoying being able to emote more naturally in the privacy of his office, this late in the day. Midoriya was really living up to Aizawa's title of problem child. The worst part of it all was that the poor boy had literally no say in any of this. The test results had come back positive as he had feared. Shigaraki, whoever he had been born as, was indeed Midoriya's blood relative. In fact, with how close the blood relationship showed, it was likely they were full-blood brothers, though half-brothers with the other parents being either siblings or close cousins was also possible. He had not wanted to be right about his suspicions, but it had been obvious the moment both he and Hound Dog had caught the other man's scent. It seemed that Midoriya had even more criminals in his family tree than first thought. Now it seemed that they would have to do the other final exam this year with how large a risk Midoriya was if he was to go rogue. Knowing how he thought, while acting as a villain would be a great help in case it became an issue further down the line. While the commission would write off his familial connection with the Sako family as merely his mother's foster family, travel records and Yagi's own testimonial showed that they were as good as blood family for the Midoriyas. That gave him at the very least a strong connection to the most skilled thieves in the country. Not that NEZU planned on turning them in despite the evidence he himself had gathered on them over the years. It was also that family background that likely led to Midoriya's strong sense of right and wrong and drive to do the right thing regardless of what the law might say, just like his great-great-grandfather Haruma Oji, better known as the Peerless Thief, had. The man had been a more real Robin Hood figure for the quirk community in years long past after all. He nodded to himself, decision made. Now to just decide who would be the other 3 team leaders and make the arrangements. Izuku found himself a bit concerned with the pained look on Aizawa-sensei's face as he walked into class that Monday following the end of their internships. Under normal circumstances today, I would be assigning you to write a paper summarizing what you all learned from your internships. This past week, however, in the wake of both the attack on the USG earlier this year, as well as the recent attack in Hasu and a few other factors, it has been decided that you will participating in a UA-style game of heroes versus villains for your final practical exam this term. He fished out a stack of manila folders with seat numbers on the fronts. Before I continue, first I feel I should distribute these basic rule packets. Inside 2 of them are role cards, 1 hero team leader and 1 villain team leader. The people with these cards are the only ones in the game who will have pre-assigned roles. Beyond that, it will be up to the team leaders to recruit members. That being said, if you have been assigned a role, it is up to you if you wish to reveal yourself to the class as a whole. There are pros and cons of doing so, of course. But that being said, it should be obvious who is on what team, even if you never publicly declare your position. All that we ask is that the team leaders submit their finalized roster of members before the exam begins so that everyone is graded appropriately. With the packet now in hand, Izuku was quick to open it and peek inside before pulling out the rules in case his growing worry that he would be the hero team leader was correct. If that was true, he would wait a couple days until he figured out the other team leader. Well, that was a thing. He was careful to keep his expression masked with the same nervous excitement as he had been wearing as he pulled out his rules, mindful of the card so it did not slip out. At the other side of the room, there was a whoop of excitement as Kirishima pulled out the hero team leader card and held it aloft. It was a plain blue card with "1 a hero" written in bold lettering in white, contrasting well with his own red and black card. Don't worry guys, I promise to not let you down, Aizawa-sensei sighed. As I was saying, while the roles for the rest of the class are currently unassigned, that can change if either you fail to end up on either final role list, or if the villain team has fewer than 5 total members including the team leader. At that point, the necessary required hero team members will be assigned traitor cards and have to get in contact with one of the 2 villain team leaders after the test begins. Ida's hand shot straight up. I'm sorry, did you just say 2? Aizawa-sensei nodded. Of course. 1B will be running the test simultaneously with you with their own 2 teams. This will create the effect of working in a city with 2 hero agencies and everything that comes with it. For the course of the exam proper, you will be locked into the testing site for 1 week, or until one side is no longer able to continue either because of an in-game death, major injury, or capture. That being said, please try and avoid permanent damage to your classmates and yourselves. Izuku blushed as that last point was clearly leveled at himself. He sighed. For the rest of the morning, you will have an extended free period to talk and recruit, as I pull each of you aside one at a time to go over the rules and answer any additional questions that you might have. Additionally, if you wish to offer to be on one of the teams without publicly announcing your intentions, you can let me know, and I will pass the message along to the team leader. Now, Aoyama, you're up first. The class devolved from there. Kaken was quick to stand up and walk over to Kirishima's desk. You better put me at the top of your stupid list, shitty hair. Oh, and me too. Izuku watched his classmates unsurprised. Both Kaken and Ishido were givens, with the other leader being Kirishima. Uraraka bounced over to himself with Ida in tow. Deku, you want to come and sign up with us for the heroes? Izuku paused before shaking his head as he crossed them off his mental list of possible recruits with a bit of sadness. Sorry, I want to see about finding out who the other leader is first. Depending on who it is, I might want to try the other team for the challenge. Plus, it might be fun to get the chance to fight Kaken again. Uraraka looked a little disappointed, but Ida only nodded. That makes a good amount of logical sense. That being said, I personally still wish to side with the heroes to make up for my recent failings as a hero, so I apologize in advance, if that means we will have to face each other in a fight later down the line. Izuku nodded. That's fair. Todoroki, who had strolled up halfway through the conversation, turned to Izuku. I intend to pick whichever side you chose, Midoriya. After our fight during the sports festival, I think it would be wise if we stayed on the same side. Izuku snorted at that. Yeah, I am not sure the teachers would be happy with us leveling the testing site. That earned a giggle from Uraraka. I still can't get over how intense that was. The two of you really embody the whole plus ultra motto of the school. Ishido, your turn. Aoyama returned to the room and began to people watch, as Izuku had recently noticed was a common hobby for him. Izuku gestured down at his packet of rules as he reached into his bag to pull out his spare notebook. If it is all right with you guys, I want to read through the rules before I talk with Aizawa-sensei, so I know what questions I should be asking. Both Uraraka and Ida nodded before wandering over to Kirishima's little forming group. Todoroki just grabbed a nearby chair and pulled it up and pulled out his own packet and rules to read through. Taking a quick glance around with just his eyes to check to make sure there was no focus on the two of them, Izuku tapped his desk silently and carefully pulled his card out and quickly slipped it into Todoroki's folder before writing. In a couple days, if needed and allowed in the rules, you are going to accidentally drop your card and claim to be the secret team leader of the villains. He nodded in understanding and wrote on the page himself. Do you want me to try and recruit other members? It might not be necessary. I will decide after I talk with Aizawa-sensei. Let him know you are going to act as my official proxy and show him the card so you can collect the official goals page when you go back to see him. Another nod before Izuku flipped the page and began to review the rules in earnest. The better part of an hour passed before Izuku found himself stepping into the private meeting room with Aizawa-sensei. You are already making plans, I see. Passing your card off to Todoroki was a clever idea to hide yourself from the hero team. Izuku gave a shaky grin. That was allowed, right? Aizawa-sensei nodded. If it isn't specifically covered in the rules, it's allowed. Izuku frowned. That is kinda a lot. It isn't exactly a long list of rules in the first place. His sensei nodded. That is by design. Part of this specific test is to test to see how far you will push the rules specifically. NEZU has a few concerns given your family history, so wants to know where you will draw your lines in the sand over what is and isn't okay. That made Izuku's brows shoot up. My family history. According to NEZU, your great-great-grandfather was the infamous peerless thief. Oh, that. Izuku considered that, and the stories his grandmother had told him growing up of her own grandfather. Yeah, I guess that is fair. I mean, we aren't blood-related, but I did hear a lot of stories about him from my grandmother. Aizawa-sensei looked surprised for a beat before shaking his head. Anyways, that would be the main reason for you being on the villain team as leader. So how was Kirishima picked for the hero? Honestly, it was purely because of Bakugo. We couldn't pick him for rival team leader with the rivalry and history between you two. But anyone else, and it seemed likely he would have completely ignored them. We're hoping that if he can learn to work under someone else willingly like this, it will make him more likely to try and listen to other pros in the future, when he does future internships and eventually becomes a sidekick. While he mostly behaved himself with best jeanist from what I understand, it was not an internship without issues. Izuku nodded in understanding. Yeah, best jeanist is one of the few top heroes he respects on an equal level. He does All Might. Aizawa-sensei's brows shot up in surprise. Really? I had wondered about why he had picked to intern with him when Endeavor sent him an offer as well. That seemed like it would have been a better match in both style and temperament. Izuku considered that. That's surprising, but maybe he decided against it knowing that Todoroki was already going with his father. Izuku shook his head. We've gotten off topic. Who all have said that they would be willing to play villain. Right. He picked up a folder and opened it. Along with obviously Todoroki, you have definites from Aoyama and Takoyami and maybes from Koda, Shoji and Gyro so far. I'll pass along both Mina's and Yayurazu's thoughts another time over the next couple days if need be. Izuku leaned forward. Did any of them say why they were currently undecided? A nod. Koda was not really committed to the idea of either team and could go either way depending on what the different teams offered. Shoji wants to make sure that the villain team will use his full skill set and not just his spying abilities. Gyro told me point blank that she just is going on the opposite team of Mina, whatever that might be, which honestly is a bit concerning. Izuku frowned. You know he was the one behind the prank on the girl's back at the sports festival, right? His teacher frowned. Yes, but unfortunately, unless the girls actually file formal complaints about his behavior, his father on the school board will continue to reject my attempts to remove him from the course. If you could convince them to do so, that would be fantastic. Izuku was quick to nod. And if you could tell Mina that the villain team has no desire for him to join, that would be great. Any other questions given Todoroki has your goal list already? A few. The rules bring up civilians from time to time. Largely those will be robots playing the role, however there will be some paid actors sprinkled in as well as a couple third years to play the vigilantes in place of their normal end-of-term exam. And the two villain teams can merge into one, right? An amused smirk. Correct. In that case, could you send a message to the other villain team leader to contact Todoroki as my proxy to see about coming to a mutually beneficial arrangement? His teacher considered that. If you want, you might be about to meet directly with them right now depending on where Vlad is in his own class lineup. Do you want me to check? Izuku was quick to nod, wondering who it could be. He was less familiar with the other class's seat numbers, so it could really be anyone at the end of the other class list. His teacher was quick to return with both Vlad-sensei and Monoma on his heels. That made sense, he supposed. Izuku quickly hopped to his feet and offered the blonde a short bow. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me on such short notice. Villain leader of 1B. Monoma frowned for a hair's breadth before breaking out his confident smirk. I was not expecting you, but I suppose that the contrast between our minds for strategy would make a more realistic challenge. Actually, I was picked because I am the only one in both classes with an actual villain in my family tree as far as I am aware. I am one of the heirs of the great peerless thief after all. Monoma's smile faltered and was immediately replaced with open curiosity and a hint of excitement. Really? Then you know what his quirk was? It was something subtle, right? I have always wondered. I actually modeled a bit of my hero identity after him. The Phantom Thief. Oh, he was quirkless, just a really good magician. That earned him confused and disbelieving looks from everyone else in the room. Sensing an incoming argument, he continued. My grandmother was first generation on that side of the family. Both her mother and grandparents were quirkless, but stage magic is a family tradition from him. I'm not the best at it, but that is what everyone in my family on my mother's side does outside of me and her. I am pretty sure if I texted my grandmother, she could dig up a picture of herself with him. Monoma fell to the floor. My life is a lie, Vlad-sensei snorted. You can freak out about this later. Midoriya wanted to talk to you about something other than his family. Izuku rolled his eyes and fished out his phone to hold it out to the other boy. It's fine, just give me your number, and we can talk after school today. I am planning on grabbing 2 other students from other courses just as a heads up. Also, if anyone asks, I am acting as a proxy, and not the real one, a villain leader, but try not to draw too much attention to it right away if you can. Monoma straightened himself out and took the phone for a second to punch in a number. Right, I see. I expect you will claim the same for me for now. And who, might I ask, is playing pretend one a villain leader? Todoroki. He agreed to be on whatever team I was on before I handed off my card to him to let him know our team. You? Monoma considered that and nodded. That is a real asset to the team. Used 𝗬𝗲𝗏 for me. He will back the claim. We will have to discuss our possible alliance later, just know I will not be playing second fiddle to you if we do merge teams. Izuku grinned and held out a hand to shake. Equal partners. After a quick handshake, the two of them left to return to their respective classes. However, once Izuku reached the door, he paused. Both of his classmates with superior hearing were potential teammates. Gyro, if you are listening, 𝐴𝐻𝐸 is not going to be on the villain team and Shoji, of course. We will be playing to your other strengths. You are one of the physically strongest guys in the class, and we plan to use that. Please keep my identity a secret for now. He paused for a beat before opening the door and stepping through. 𝐴𝐻𝐸, it's your turn. Izuku had just sat down and the door closed behind 𝐴𝐻𝐸 when Gyro poked Yaoyorozu with her earphone jack. We are joining the villain team. That got everyone's attention as Yaoyorozu seemed to sigh in relief. You got confirmation from the villain team leader? Yeah, they said point blank that they don't want 𝐴𝐻𝐸 on their team before coming back in. Ashido pouted slightly. Ah man, we should have thought about doing that. Gyro offered a smile. I mean, you guys could switch sides? 𝐜𝐴𝐻𝐸 waved her off. Nah, it is only fair that there are girls on both teams. Sucks that we will have to put up with him for the week, but there are going to be more of us to keep an eye on him. Takoyami cleared his throat. If you are going to be open about your alignment with the dark, it is only fair I share my own. Dark shadow popped out to drape itself around his shoulders. Yeah, this is a great chance for me to go wild and not get in trouble. Izuku cleared his throat. I mean, that is not completely true. You will still have to be a little careful. Some of the citizens in the simulation will be played by actors, and a couple upperclassmen from what I understand. You don't want to accidentally hurt them too badly. Kirishima looked interested in his interruption. Wait, really? Izuku nodded and blushed lightly. Yeah, that is one of the things I asked about when I talked with Aizawa-sensei about the rules. I noticed that the word civilian came up a lot in the what to DOS and what not to DOS with them, so I asked about it. The vigilantes will all be third years doing their own exam. Kirishima broke out into a grin. Wow, Midoriya, I am not sure if I would have thought to ask about that. Thanks. Have you decided which team you will be on yet? Izuku shook his head. I want to give the villain team a chance to pitch their side first. Give me a couple days. That earned him a thumbs up. Fair enough, dude. He turned his attention back to his already existing teammates. After a minute, Gyro drifted over, following Yaoyorozu, leaving the room for her own chat with their teacher before quietly speaking. A chance to win you over, huh? Izuku gave her a small grin before quietly responding. I don't want them knowing the villain leader for our team is me. Class 1B is doing something similar for right now, until we decide if we are combining forces or not. So who all do we have so far? Besides you, Yaoyorozu and Takoyami. Aoyama and Todoroki for sure. Shoji is likely once I can talk to him properly, and Kota is a current full neutral to win over. Additionally, I plan on snagging 2 more students from outside the hero course, Shinso and Hatsune from the sports festival. They stood toe-to-toe with us and only lost because of a poor matchup on Shinso's part, and because Hatsune threw her fight. She nodded in understanding. So 9 members. That is more than I was expecting. Maybe this will not be such an uphill battle as I thought. Izuku actually considered that. Well, there is one more person I have been considering, but that one depends on a number of outside factors. At the very least, he would be able to help me practice my presentation. Oh. Izuku nodded. My cousin is a stage magician, or, well, his parents and our grandparents are too, but he was the one I was thinking of. Anyways, I was thinking if he could infiltrate the actors to play a civilian, he could be our wild card. Once the game starts, we are free to recruit from the actors if we can win them over, and having a civilian face in our team would be useful. I'm going to try and call him after school today at some point. She scratched her chin. Not a bad plan, but is that allowed? According to Sensei, unless otherwise stated in the rules, everything is fair game. The reason I was picked for team leader is because NEZU is assessing my thinking specifically as a villain, since my family has a known villain in our family history. My great-great-grandfather was the peerless thief. Gyro looked surprised, but gave a small understanding nod. Before they could really chat more, Kota approached them. Tilda, excuse me, I am not interrupting the villain team's pitch, am I? 𝐀𝐦 shook her head. No, we were just chatting about his magician cousin helping me learn some sleight of hand. You want to ask something? Koda gave a nervous nod before signing to them. I was just wondering what the villain team was considering offering for me to join the team. 𝐀𝐦 shrugged. I haven't really had a chance to consult with the boss on that. Give us a few days to get back to you. He smiled and nodded. I can wait that long. Do you know if you have enough team members yet? She did nod at that. Yeah, we have 5 confirmed in the class already, and a couple of maybes including you and Midoriya here. He nodded in understanding. Okay. Thanks for telling me. 𝗀𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻𝗻 Izuku made a beeline down to the Class 1C classroom after sending Monoma a text that he was going to try and recruit some people before he could chat. It was empty of all students except 𝗫𝐻, who was working on his homework. Something that Izuku had noticed about 𝗫𝐻 since their fight a little over 2 weeks before was that he often stayed late on campus and didn't leave until after the hero course students did for one reason or another. The boy looked up at him in confusion as he opened the door. Can I help you?" Izuku gave him a grin. "How would you like another chance to prove that you should be in the hero course?" The boy narrowed his eyes with suspicion. "I would like it a lot, but I don't see what that has to do with you." "Sorry, I just think it is criminally unfair that you keep getting denied your rightful place in the course with such an amazingly useful quirk for heroics, because you keep getting put in bad matchups." The boy frowned slightly. "So you're just pitying me? No thanks, I'm not interested." Izuku was quick to wave the thought off. "No, I am just saying that you should have been in our class from the start. I would vastly prefer you over 𝗫𝐻. He is only still in our class because his father on the school board is making it hard for Aizawa-sensei to remove him apparently. I'm hoping that if the next time he tries, if he has clear proof that you are a better candidate for his seat in our class, we can switch you." That earned a quirked brow. "Damn, what that guy do to you that you want him out so badly?" "It wasn't so much to me as all the girls in the class. He is sort of a walking sexual harassment case waiting to happen, and I don't really enjoy having him seat directly behind me in class, where I have to hear him degrade our classmates under his breath all the time." 𝗫𝐻 looked a bit bewildered, but gave a small puzzled nod. "Okay, so what is this plan to get me into your class over him?" Izuku winced slightly. "Okay, you are probably not going to like this part much, but let me finish explaining first. The final exam for heroics this term has already started. Basically, we are playing a massive game of heroes versus villains the week of finals, but we have the weeks between now and then to recruit members to our teams and plan. I am the villain team leader, and one of my first plans of action, once the game starts, is to have 𝗫𝐻 taken out of the game to make it more enjoyable for all the girls. I was hoping that if it was shown that you from Gen Ed were better than him in a one-on-one fight, that it would be proof that you deserve his seat more, but regardless, if you were to play, it would only help prove that you deserve to be in the course when you show you can hold your own against literally anyone else in the hero course besides me and maybe Tokoyami." "You're right, I don't like it. Why should I join the villains if joining the heroes is an option?" Izuku sighed. "Because it is not. I am uncertain about 1B, but I know for a fact that the 𝗏 hero team leader will not recruit you. He won't think of recruiting outside our class, and even if you did offer, he will likely not see the need given the hero teams are going to outnumber the villains teams just by nature." 𝗫𝐻 frowned and slowly nodded. "So just to be clear, you want me on your team, not because you pity me, or because my villainous quirk is perfect for the scenario." "There is no such thing." The response was such a knee-jerk reaction that Izuku didn't even register that he had said it until 𝗫𝐻 broke into a small smile at that. "Wow, I wouldn't have taken that to be such an instinctual response from someone with such a perfect hero quirk. Sore spot. I am sort of an outlier in my family as far as quirks go. My mom has been accused a few times of trying to steal things when she sometimes grabs something with her quirk while out shopping if she is too short to reach it. The whole idea of quirks being heroic or villainous is just completely ridiculous." 𝗫𝐻 was openly smiling now. "Well, damn hero course, you really know how to win a guy over, huh? Alright, I'll play along for now." Izuku grinned and pulled out his phone. "If you could add your number. I am planning on making a villain team chat for planning later tonight, after I do a few more things. Now if you could follow me, we have one more person to possibly recruit, and to talk to about getting you some support gear." 𝗫𝐻 quickly punched in his number and handed the phone back before scooping up his homework and supplies before shoving them in his bag. They were halfway to the support labs when Shinso suddenly paused. Wait, you mentioned that you thought my quirk would work on all your classmates except you, and that Tokoyami guy. Why? Izuku blinked. Oh, I guess that wouldn't be obvious. The reason I was a bad matchup is because I have a sentient quirk like he does. Mine is just less obvious about it. It was how I was able to break free. Shinso sighed. Well, that answers that mystery. I'll be honest. The fact that I couldn't for the life of me figure out how you broke my control was bothering me. Oh, yeah, sorry. If it makes you feel better, I didn't even realize my quirk was sentient until then too. My quirk came in pretty late, so I am still trying to figure it out. Shinso nearly tripped. Shit, you're a late bloomer? Great. Now I feel like an asshole for some of the things I said. Izuku waved him off. It is not like you knew. Besides, you were just trying to get a verbal response from me at the time. That was all fair game. So is that why you break your bones when you use your quirk? Not enough time with a quirk counselor to get a full handle on that before starting here at UA, Izuku nodded. Yeah, basically that's it. I was able to finally work out what was going wrong during my internship thanks to the hero I interned with. He also helped me with my mobility training too as an added bonus. They had reached the labs now, but before they could open the door for Class 1H where his next target was, the door blew off its hinges in an explosion. That's it. You're done for the day, Hatsu. Out. But my babies? No, out. Izuku and Shinso watched as a soot-covered power loader shoved a begging Hatsume out of the doorway. Izuku scratched the back of his head. Is now a bad time? The pair froze for a heartbeat before Hatsume was on him. 10 mil, what brings you here? Do you need help making babies? Shinso beside him, caught completely off guard, was blushing wildly. The fuck? TMI, Izuku laughed. She means her invention, Shinso. He turned back to the pinkette. Yes, actually, but not for me yet. I have an offer for you. How would you like to be the official support item creator for the Class 1 of Villain team for our Heroes vs. Villains final? Hatsume was practically vibrating with excitement. An exclusivity deal? Izuku nodded. I would like you to be an official team member, actually. That way, if I find myself in need of something during the exam that I didn't think of before starting, I have you and your skills. Sold. What's the plan, boss? Well, that was easy. Not that he had really expected any issues with her. Izuku gestured over at Shinso. This is Shinso. Your first order of business will be helping him get some support items since he has none. Before I leave you two to it, can I have your number so I can loop you in with the rest of the team? She made grabby hands for Izuku's phone before punching in her number and grabbing Shinso to pull him back into the lab. Izuku found himself being stared at by Power Loader with a resigned look about him. Of all my students, I understand why you would pick her, but did you really have to? Izuku offered the teacher an apologetic grin. Sorry, but not only is her tech good, but she has a bit of combat experience, which would be good to have in an emergency unlike any of the others. He just sighed and shook his head. I best get back to keeping an eye on her before she blows up your other outside recruit. Best of luck with your preparations. With that, Izuku was alone again. Now to head home and make a few calls. Hey, are you busy for the next couple weeks? Atsuhiro hummed in consideration, thinking about his recent conversation with Jiren. Not that I am aware of. I am in the middle of negotiating a new contract for future work, but it is unlikely that I will be starting a new job in that time frame. I was hoping you would be willing to help me with my plans for my final exam for the term. We are doing a US-style game of heroes versus villains, and I am the villain team leader. I was hoping that, at the bare minimum, you would be able to help me teach my team members some sleight of hand for the exercise. I would have considered asking your parents or our grandparents, but they are still doing their show in Hokkaido, and it seemed like a long trip for them to make. Atsuhiro almost laughed at the irony that his little hero cousin that he had not seen in person since he was a toddler was calling him for help acting villainous right before he took his own first real steps into villainy. I would be more than happy to help. Would you be so kind as to put Auntie on the phone? There was a sound of the phone changing hands. Was there something you need, Atsuhiro? I was just wondering if you had space at your place for me to stay while I was in town helping Izuku teach his friends, or if I should look for a cheap short-term rental. We don't have a spare room, but we can most certainly set you up on the spare futon in either my own or Izuku's rooms. That would work just fine. Would you be opposed to me coming over tomorrow? No, tomorrow works for us if you can do it that soon. I am between jobs right now, so it is no trouble. I am honored that it falls to me to teach Izuku both sides of our family business, even if it is just for a game. 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗲. After a few more shared pleasantries on his mother's and cousin's parts, Izuku was returned his phone. Retreating to the privacy of his bedroom, he dialed one of his newest numbers. Monoma, is now a good time. A dramatic sigh from the other end of the line. If we must. Izuku rolled his eyes. I spoke with my cousin about getting lessons in sleight of hand for my team. Did you want to join at least for those even if we don't end up allying in the game? Yes. I mean, I am already skilled in the art thanks to my own personal training, but I would be a fool to pass on the chance to learn some of the peerless thief's tricks from your family. Izuku had to muffle his snort at the other boy's enthusiasm. If I had known you were as much of a fan of my great-great-grandfather as I am of All Might, I would have told you sooner, you know, class rivalry aside. There was a noise of embarrassment from the other end of the line. No one will ever believe you, Izuku laughed. Hey, I wasn't going to say anything about it. I just thought it was an interesting new side to see of you that wasn't just you hyping your own class up over mine. A scoff. Well, I can't help it if 1B is clearly superior to 1A. We are getting off topic though. I believe you wanted to talk about possibly working together. Yeah, I was thinking there would be safety in numbers if nothing else. Individually, our teams don't stand as much of a chance, but combined we might outnumber the hero teams if we take them on one at a time. A hum in thought. That is an excellent thought, I will admit. How goes your recruitment? I have met the minimum requirement already, but I am trying to see if I can get a few extras. I have 5 others besides myself confirmed on the villain team from my class, and 2 more possibilities. Additionally, I was able to talk around both Shinzo from 1C and Hatsum from support to our side. So a possible maximum number of 18. 19 counting Dark Shadow separately from Tokoyami, and 20 if my cousin can enter the exam as an actor. Wait, that would be allowed. If it is not otherwise stated in the rules, it's fair game. Still, that is less of a guarantee since there are multiple factors beyond our control there. Still, we can count him as an honorary member since he would be helping with the preparations. You know, with that many members, we are just too shy of a possible full set of major arcana. Izuku considered that. Actually, with how I was thinking, it would be smart to play things. We have a full set. I was thinking that we keep our identities hidden for as long as possible, so we would each have 2 villain identities. One as the shadow villain group leader, and one as a recruit each. A pause. Well, now we have to do it for our villain group theme. We might have to stretch to make some of the arcana match up with some of the members though. I mean, that's fine. It would only help in creating confusion for the hero teams. I think it would make the most sense if one of us as leader was deaf, and my cousin was the magician, but everyone else would be up in the air. A hum in thought. The other leader should be the tower, I think, if you recruited Tokoyami. He is a good fit for both the lovers and the devil between him and his quirk. Chaos and death. Yeah, that makes sense for the leaders, and you're right about Tokoyami. They spent the next several minutes bouncing card assignments back and forth between them and discussing a few ideas of how to guarantee the last couple members before moving on to more plans they had in the works. About an hour later, when Izuku had to hang up to go eat dinner, the 2 of them had developed a bit of a more natural rapport with one another. A shared love of magic tricks and cards now known between them. 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗲. The Hands of Fate Midoriya Izuku added Monoma Nito. Midoriya Izuku has granted Monoma Nito admin privileges. Monoma Nito added 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬 𝐈𝐻 𝐍𝐴𝐭 𝐼𝐻 and 𝗵𝗲𝗄 𝐘𝐲 Momomo Naito changed their name to Wheel of Fortunate Death. Midoriya Izuku added Aoyama Yuga, Ghirō Kyoka, Hatsum Mei and 4 others. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬 to the Emperor. Midoriya Izuku changed their name to Strengthen the Tower. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed 𝗂𝐻 to the Sun. Strengthened the Tower changed Aoyama Yuga to the Hanged Man. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed Shiozaki Ibara to the Hierophant. Strengthen the Tower changed Ghirō Kyoka to the World. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed 𝗵𝗲𝗄 𝐘𝐲 to Justice. Strengthened the Tower changed Sako Atsuhiro to the Magician. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed Hatsum Mei to the Fool. Strengthen the Tower changed Todoroki Shoto to Temperance. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed Shinso Hitoshi to Judgment. Strengthened the Tower changed Yaoyorozu Momo to the High Priestess. Wheel of Fortunate Death changed Tokoyami Fumikage to the Devil Lovers. Strengthen the Tower. Welcome everyone to our combined team. Wheel of Fortunate Death. The future winning team Midoriya. And I have hashed out an agreement and picked a theme for the group of the major arcana from a tarot deck. since if our last possible recruitments work out, we would have a full deck with the two of us holding two identities strengthen the tower. We plan on playing the true identity of the team leaders close to our chest, so if you could refer to each of us as Death and the tower when speaking about your respective leaders, we would appreciate it. Judgment. Yeah, I am not reading through all that mess to figure out my name. Oh sweet the world. Who is Sako Atsuhiro? The name doesn't ring any bells. Judgment. I will be here silently judging you hero course guys then. The Magician. I would be surprised if you did. Hello US students. I am Izuku's older cousin who will be helping teach you the basics of magic tricks for you to use in the exam. Strengthen the tower. Atsuhiro is actually a magician by trade like a number of members of my family. The fool. Should I be mad about my card? I feel like maybe I should be reconsidering my offer to make you all a bunch of babies. Wheel of Fortunate Death. The Fool represents spontaneity and a free spirit, upright and risk taking in the reverse. The Fool. Oh never mind then, carry on the Hierophant. I assume you most have selected all of our names with the meaning of the cards in mind then. I would have assumed that I would have been the High Priestess otherwise. Strengthen the tower. Yep. It took a bit to work everything out so that even the unconfirmed fit with their cards. But we are pretty sure we matched everyone fairly well. Tarot card meanings, so you can read up on your card. The Devil Lovers. I have to ask about my name. Why do I seem to have two cards as well? Strengthen the tower. One is yours, and the other is Dark Shadow. You can pick which is which. They fit the pair of you either way. The Devil Lovers. I see Dark Shadow appreciates the inclusion. Temperance. I assume that since we will be referring to our leaders as Death and the tower, that I no longer will be needed to pretend to be the team leader. Strengthen the tower. No, you're good. You can return my card later when you pass me my hard copy of our goal sheet. Thanks for the picture of it, by the way. That was helpful. While Monoma and I were figuring things out, Yuga lowered his phone as the messages continued to roll in. He was wondering what on earth had compelled him to tell his sensei he was playing for the villain team. It had been a stupid idea. There was no reason for his teacher to understand his impulsive cry for help, and all it was going to do was make his position as the US spy for all for one more precarious. But what was done was done. Curious as to what the card chosen for himself meant, he clicked the link and read. The Hanged Man upright. Pause, surrender, letting go, new perspectives reversed. Delays, resistance, stalling, indecision. The Hanged Man shows a man suspended from a T-shaped cross made of living wood. He is hanging upside down, viewing the world from a completely different perspective, and his facial expression is calm and serene, suggesting that he is in this hanging position by his own choice. He has a halo around his head, symbolizing new insight, awareness, and enlightenment. His right foot is bound to the tree, but his left foot remains free, bent at the knee and tucked in behind his right leg. His arms are bent, with hands held behind his back, forming an inverted triangle. The man is wearing red pants representing human passion and the physical body, and a blue vest for knowledge. The Hanged Man is the card of ultimate surrender, of being suspended in time and of martyrdom and sacrifice to the greater good. Yuga stared at the description for a few moments before sending Midoriya a private message. I just read the description for my card, and I have no idea what to make of the fact you chose it for me. Midoriya. Sorry, I guess that doesn't make sense without context. I was hoping you would play spy for us with the hero team, since you have given no outward indication that you are on our team. Sorry. I was planning on checking with Aizawa-sensei what the rules were for someone intentionally signing up for both teams and making sure it was okay theoretically. I think it would mean you would function like one of the traitors in the example Aizawa-sensei gave in his explanation of what would happen if there were not enough villains. But I need to confirm it. Yuga stared at his phone for a second before turning and burying his face in his pillow with a scream. That done, he decided to deal with whatever this karma was. At the very least, I can pretend to sign up for the other team. I suspect that since I formally declared my allegiance with the villains, that my declaring myself on the other team, allowed for their benefit, won't change my alliance. Midoriya. Sorry if it feels like I am pushing you to do this. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. It is fine, Mon Ami. Just the sort of cloak and dagger drama I had been hoping for, actually. So what is the plan you were hoping for with me? Midoriya. One of the goals for the villains is to fake a death of a team member convincingly. I was thinking that we could capture and torture you on camera while live streaming the hero team before executing you. After that, you would fully be acting on our side until it is suitably dramatic to reveal you as our Hanged Man. Yuga blinked. That seems a bit extreme. I am not complaining. I merely was not expecting it from you. I know you are not all sunshine and rainbows like our class on the whole seems to think, but still. Midoriya. This is exactly why I was happy that things worked out so you could play spy. I've seen how much you people watch, so I know I could trust you to pay attention to our classmates. Clearly, he had not given Midoriya's observation abilities enough credit. I see. Well, I will endeavor to not let you down. 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗬𝗬𝐸. The next day began with Izuku meeting Todoroki at the front gates before slipping away out of sight, so the other boy could pass him his villain card and goals list, which he was quick to slip into the depths of his bag for the day before heading their separate ways. Todoroki to their class and Izuku to the teacher's lounge to ask his new question. 𝐬𝐻-sensei looked up as he knocked on the door. You looking for Aizawa? He won't be here for another half hour or so. Izuku fidgeted with his bag straps. I am not looking for him specifically. I just had a question regarding the final. He put down his paperwork he had been working on and gestured to one of the other chairs in the office. Well, I can help you out with that. While the hero versus villains assignment isn't run for finals in the first term for first years like you guys very often, it is standard practice for my third years. Shoot. Izuku's brows shot up at that. Oh, I didn't know that. Does that mean my year will run it twice? Yep, that is the standard procedure, though you wouldn't have the same team leaders next go round and be encouraged to mix up your teams more. Izuku nodded. That makes sense. He shook his head. Anyways, I was wondering what would happen if a student signed up for both teams. But they wouldn't actually be signing up for both now, would they? They would be assessed as a villain. You planning on running the team hidden on the other side? No, that would be too much of a communications hassle. I just wanted to make sure that my plan to have one of my members play spy would work. Yep. I can confirm it has been done in previous years successfully, though the mileage they got in each case varied based on the quality of the spy. Izuku grinned and gave his teacher a short bow. Thanks, 𝐻𝐻-sensei. That was everything for now. Have fun messing with the other team, kid. Izuku left, pulling out his phone to quickly send Aoyama a message confirming that their thoughts had been correct and to move ahead with his plan as spy. Izuku was greeted by the sight of the morning class mostly split into two groups. Kirishima gave him a wave. Hey, Midoriya. Villain team leader get in contact with you, yet to give you their pitch yet. Izuku nodded as he strolled over to where Gyro, Takoyami and Yaoyorozu were sitting. I have accepted the tower's offer. Confusion danced over the various hero team members, as well as a few flickers of disappointment, as it dawned on them that they had lost not only Izuku but Todoroki as well as the bi-colored boy moved his seat over to sit with the small villain group. The tower? Gyro turned to look back at the confused hero team leader. Our leader's villain name. They want to stay anonymous for now, so asked that we only refer to them by that name until they reveal themselves. Yororoka huffed. What did the villain team offer you, Deku? I was looking forward to working together on this. Izuku pulled out the deck of cards he had brought with him and made a show of flicking the card he had palmed up his sleeve earlier into his fingers. A chance to use some of my lesser-known skill sets. Kaken snorted. Those stupid magic tricks you can do aren't going to help you on the losing team, Deku. Izuku gave him a grin. True, except for the losing team part, Kaken. The tower was looking for someone with showmanship skills to help teach them some tricks for their own persona, and, well, my family has that in spades. He flicked his hand again to switch the 2 of hearts in his fingers with the ace of spades. That earned him a couple of cheers at the trick. Kaminari was in his face in a heartbeat. Dude, that was so cool. Why didn't you tell all of us you knew magic tricks? Izuku's smile broadened. It never came up. My mother and I are the only ones in my family who aren't magicians, actually. Ashido turned to Kaken, eyes burning with curiosity. Is that true? Kaken huffed but nodded. Yeah, the whole lot of them are apparently a bunch of magic weirdos living up in Hokkaido. I've never met them, but Deku used to show back up after visiting them doing all sort of stupid magic shit. It was annoying as hell before he stopped bringing that shit with him to school. The idiot has hit me in the back of the head with cards a stupid number of times practicing, though I for the life of me have no idea why. It is not like he plans on doing anything with it as a hero. Izuku shrugged. It is just a hobby, Kaken. You know it wouldn't hurt for you to pick a few up. From his seat in the front of the class, Aoyama gave an over-dramatic shrug. As interesting as that all is, I feel I should point out that card tricks would be no match for the hero team's fabulous sparkle. Kirishima brightened. Oh, you want to join the team too? Aoyama gave a shrug. But of course. Where else will I be able to truly shine? The other boy looked around the room. That just leaves 𝐻𝐻𝐸 and Shoji undeclared, right? Shoji shook his head. No, just 𝐻𝐻𝐸. I was just waiting on confirmation of something from the villain team. Ojiro gave him a puzzled look. You don't have to join the villains if you don't want to. They have the required 5 they need already. Shoji nodded. That is true, but I think I will enjoy the challenge that comes from being on the smaller team. Kirishima shrugged. Up to you, man. He turned his attention to 𝐻𝐻𝐸. Do you want me to put you down for my team? 𝐻𝐻𝐸 hesitated before shaking his head. I want to hear what both sides have to offer from me first. I already heard from the villains, but what would I get if I joined your team? Izuku internally grinned as he realized that his messages he had sent to both boys the previous night had been well received. Kirishima's grin faltered as it took him a few seconds to work out what the other boy had signed. You would get to be a hero like we are all training to do? 𝐻𝐻𝐸 nervously flushed. And that's it. I mean, yeah. What were you looking for? Todoroki gave the hero team leader a considered look. You realize most of the best signers for our class are already on the villain team. If nothing else, he can communicate more easily with our team. Several of the hero team winced as they realized the truth of that statement. Sato gave the other quiet boy an apologetic grin. Sorry, it is not like I am not trying to get better. It is just you sign a bit fast for me to keep up at times. It is all good. It is just nice to have confirmation that I won't have to verbally speak if I don't want to. He turned to the villains. I guess I am accepting the tower's offer. Grinning, Izuku pulled out his phone and added the 2 to the chat 𝐻𝐻𝐸 as the hermit and Shoji as the chariot. Izuku felt a bit nervous after school as he led not only his own team of recruits, but 1B team as well home to his little apartment. It was going to be a tight squeeze. He had warned both his mother and cousin how many people were coming, but it wasn't until they were all exiting the train happily chatting with one another that it hit him just how many people were coming home with him. He had never invited friends over to his place before outside of Kaken, and now he was bringing home 18. Okay, so he might not really be friends with everyone personally yet, but they would be spending a week living and committing fake crimes together, so it was honestly just a matter of time really. He had already won over the hardest one in Monoma by chance, and he was already on at least good terms with all of his classmates, as well as the 2 outside hero course recruits, so that only left 7 that he didn't really know all that well yet. Honestly, Monoma was worse off since he had to deal with the fact he had been openly antagonistic towards all of Wano for weeks, and he seemed to be settling into casual conversation with at least a couple members of the group. Finally, he was at his front door and kicking off his shoes. However, before too many of the others had made it through the door themselves, Izuku found himself greeted with a sight of his cousin in less than casual dress stacking playing card boxes from his spot seated on the living room floor. It wasn't until that moment that he mentally registered the fact that his cousin seemed to actually be pretty close in age as some of their teachers. That wasn't to say he was old at 31, but that it had never really hit him how young their teachers generally were. The statistics of how young heroes generally retired suddenly hit him, if they even lived that long. Oh dear, Izuku, are you all right? Izuku shook his head to clear it of that depressing train of thought. Sorry, I just had a bit of a realization that you might actually be older than my homeroom teacher, and the fact that I might have to switch career paths by the time I reach your age sort of hit me like a truck. Atsuhiro frowned. I am not sure if I should be insulted that you are calling me an old man, or concerned that you hadn't considered that fact sooner given that you managed to permanently disfigure your hand before you had even been in UA for more than a month. As his teammates poured into the room, several of them seemed to mutter between themselves. Shinso, however, just squinted slightly at Atsuhiro with a tilt of his head. No, he does have a point. Both Aizawa-sensei and Mike-sensei are only 30 and Midnight is only 31 based on the footage I watched from old sports festivals. Atsuhiro's eyes widened. Oh dear, I suppose I am actually older than some of them then. Kaibara from 1B raised his hand. Okay, I am just going to ask. Anyone else find it weird how much older he is than Midoriya? I was expecting him to only be like a couple years older than us since he is Midoriya's cousin. Izuku snorted. There is only a year more of an age difference than there is between Ida and his older brother. It is not that weird, especially when you consider that my uncle is 10 years my mom's senior. Atsuhiro waved him off. It's fine. I know it must be a bit weird hanging out in a semi-casual setting with someone basically twice your age. Besides, I am here to teach you sleight of hand anyways. Izuku flashed his cousin a grin. Oh, should we all start calling you sensei then? That earned a laugh from the kitchen from where his mother had been watching the conversation from afar as his cousin made a face at the idea. Atsuhiro waved off the idea and started picking up decks of cards and tossing them around at the others. Just Sako is fine from your friends here, Izuku. Gyro smirked as she opened her box of cards. Maybe we should call you magician so we can all get in the habit of using each other's villain names. Izuku lit up. Oh, that is a good point. We should be doing that. So with that in mind, the lesson that followed was filled with not only fumbling of cards, but names as well as people practiced putting villain names with faces. Atsuhiro sat nervously in the offices of the Help Us company as one of the acting managers looked over his resume. So, Sako, could you explain why you have expressed interest in working with us for a one-off exercise for 𝐬𝐻, and how you even knew about it in the first place? Ah, that is simple. My cousin is going to be one of the students participating in the exam, and given that the villain team that he is a member of are allowed to recruit from the actors. The man nodded. So you are applying as a faux villain actor specifically. Lucky for you, one of the third years a couple years back from UA wanted to pull something similar as your cousin. So I know all the protocols for doing this. You are going to have to submit a fake police dossier to NEZU directly before we can sign off on you and pass his background check and temporary quirk licensing for the exercise. But from what I say of your audition tapes and your skills from your background in magic for sleight of hand, I think we can pencil you in as one of the low-level criminal actors. Atsuhiro grinned. Easily done. It will be fun working with you. WGO. As the time passed and the exam drew closer, the divide in the class continued to grow. This right here was the reason 𝐲𝐻𝐬 had always been so against the class doing this exam. Against doing the exam in any year, really. His own class in his third year went nuclear when they had done it, and he and Hisashi burned a lot of bridges as the villains of their year, and if the same thing happened with Midoriya and his team, then the next couple years would be hell for the kids. But on the other hand, working toward this exam had made his son the happiest he had been in a while. Hitoshi was not exactly all that great about making friends, sharing far too much in common with 𝐲𝐻𝐬 himself. Honestly, the older he grew, the more 𝐲𝐻𝐬 found himself agreeing with his husband's assessment that the kid could have easily actually passed as his biological son, if it wasn't for that fact that 𝐲𝐻𝐬 was a couple years too young and had only ever dated Hisashi. Honestly, with how murky their family histories were as foundling orphans, it was entirely possible that they actually were related. Not that it mattered either way for them. After all, if it had, they would have taken up NEZU's offer to run a comparison test back when he and Hisashi had first taken the kid in. As it stood though, Hisashi was sending 𝐲𝐻𝐬 looks of amusement as Hitoshi happily rambled about how the villain team meet-up that afternoon had gone. 𝐲𝐻𝐬 rolled his eyes at his husband before reaching out to ruffle their son's hair. I'm glad that you are making friends. Hitoshi huffed and carded his fingers through his hair to reverse what 𝐲𝐻𝐬 had just done. So you might have been right that not all your students are that bad. I still don't have to like the ones on the hero team though. From some of the stuff Midoriya has said about Bakugo, I am still pretty sure my first impression of him was correct. 𝐲𝐻𝐬 frowned. Oh, and what was that? Hitoshi shrugged. That the guy has a massive ego that needs to get taken down a peg and is a major hothead. At least in his defense for the second one, Midoriya says that his temper is a genetic thing. Apparently Midoriya's aunt, who is Bakugo's mother, has just as short of a temper. 𝐲𝐻𝐬 had known that Midoriya and Bakugo had a history, but he didn't realize it likely dated back quite that far. He mentally recategorized the pair of them from just school rivals to family members. So the two of them are cousins. Hitoshi made a so-so gesture. Midoriya says that they aren't actually related, but his mother and Bakugo's have been best friends since they were around our age. She is his aunt, the same way Nem is mine. Hisashi nodded. You learn anything else super neat about your new friends? Hitoshi seemed to have to think for a bit on that. Todoroki is apparently a bit of a conspiracy theorist. He thinks that since Midoriya's father is not in the picture, that All Might is secretly his biological father. He's not. Midoriya's father is just a cheating asshole, so Midoriya's mother didn't want him in Midoriya's life, which is fair. Both 𝐲𝐻𝐬 and Hisashi winced at that and exchanged looks before 𝐲𝐻𝐬 gave their son a questioning look. Should that be something to worry about for Midoriya? Hitoshi shook his head. No, I don't think so. While Miss Midoriya was pretty closed-lipped about his father when the topic came up, she did mention that the guy was a pro-hero who was just as much of a womanizer as 𝐜𝐡𝐻 used to be. Hisashi immediately relaxed and snorted. I hate that is still vague enough that I can't suss out who it is. Thanks to Nem, I know for a fact that we have like 3 more aromatic heroes besides her, and 1 poly one in just this city. 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗲 Izuku spun slightly on the raised platform that they had set up in Yaoyorozu's place. They had started relocating their after-school meetups to her mansion after that first one because of how cramped it had been in his own apartment. Today was one of their final preparation days left, so they had to get their costuming figured out before it was too late. Izuku was wearing a green vest over a black button-down top and black pants, with some reinforced red shoes made to mimic his normal ones with a long green coat thrown over top. I don't know. Something still feels like it is missing. As several of the others around the room threw out suggestions, Atsuhiro gained a thoughtful look. He pulled out one of his marbles and snapped to release its contents before handing over a pair of gloves, a black balaclava, a large top hat, and a black and white mask. Here, try these. Izuku looked at them questioningly, before taking them and beginning to pull them on. You just happen to have these on you? Atsuhiro shrugged. I was planning on using them for my own villain costume, pairing them with my normal magician outfit. He gestured to himself as if to make his point. If they work for you, we can just recreate them in a more suitable color palette for you. Monoma made a noise of appreciation once he finished getting it all on. You know, that goes a long way to making you hard to identify as you. Maybe the majority of us should dress up similarly. That way, if we need you to be seen acting as the tower or myself as death before our reveal, we could maybe switch the mask for a different one in exchange, and remove the colorful identifying clothing. Tokoyami huffed. That is all well and good for most of you. But what about those of us with mutations? It is not like those masks would do anything to disguise Shoji, Koda, Shirazaki, or myself. Plus, there is the issue that one would not even fit over my face. Gyro lifted her earjacks up. Add me to that count as well. I can't wear anything that covers my ears like that without interfering with my quirk any more than Shirazaki can with her vines. Izuku winced behind the mask before tugging it off. That is true, but that was going to be an issue regardless. We can still get you guys masks, even if we aren't hiding your identities like with the rest of us for the sake of group unification. Though obviously yours will have to be a custom-shaped one, Tokoyami. He turned back to his cousin. Do you have more masks like this, or are we making more of them from scratch? Atsuhiro fished out another marble and snapped his fingers again. Just these 6, but one is technically just my template for if I wanted to make more, so it's blank. Shirazaki lifted the plain white mask from his hands and turned it over. So we need 13 more of these with different designs, and 1 more for Tokoyami. If I draw up a few patterns, Yaoyorozu, would you be able to create them? It seems I have found my true purpose for siding with the dark forces for this one endeavor. Gyro gave her a puzzled look. No offense, Shirazaki, but why did you choose to side with us? I get why most of us did. Either because we are friends with our class leaders, or like the aesthetic or whatever. But isn't this like the complete opposite of the sort of thing you would like? She nodded. True, however, I could not help. But I could not help but see myself holding a candle to hold back the darkness of our team's hearts. Monoma rolled his eyes. I asked her to join to make sure we don't get too carried away in the role of villains as soon as I saw the goal sheet for the villains. A fact I am extra glad I did, given some of the shit Midoriya has been coming up with strategy-wise. I am pretty sure like half of the stuff I have had to veto us doing would be considered psychological torture for our classmates. That earned Izuku a mix of surprised and exasperated looks from the others. His cousin, however, was an exception in that he just snorted. You do have to keep in mind that his mother is one of the most ruthless attorneys in the heroics industry. Ripping apart how other people think is her bread and butter. I am frankly not surprised that Izuku has picked up on some of that over time. Izuku huffed and walked over and shoved the man lightly. I am not that bad. 𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗲 was a bit worried about how the test was going to go. It wasn't that he didn't think that his team wouldn't do awesome as heroes and all that, but he couldn't shake the gut feeling that something was going to go wrong. Unlike with the villain team, the hero team did not have a whole lot of prep work to do in the lead up to the test. Most of it was learning the paperwork that they would be expected to fill out over the course of the test as heroes that they would one day be doing working as the real heroes. After action reports, how to compile a villain dossier on a new villain found, and how to update an old one in the database, and financial and insurance reports to make sure that everyone was paid correctly after a major fight. He was slightly jealous of the villain teams. While they had to do a lot of prep work before the test started, during the test they would not have to deal with a single sheet of paperwork. At least some of the pressure of doing the paperwork had been relieved of him by Ida and Bakugo, who had ended up as his second in commands. Between the two of their detail-oriented selves, he at least would not have to worry about forgetting something important. But the test would not start until tomorrow afternoon. Today, he still had to get through the written exam and ensure that he was all packed up for the possibly week-long stay in the hero team headquarters. Tomorrow morning, the villain teams would get a head start into the city to set up their bases, while both hero teams would get their formal police debriefing about the new villain groups and the vigilantes that they might run into. Tamaki couldn't help but feel a spike of anxiety when he and Nejiri were told to head to Nezu's office at the end of the day. While they were joined quickly enough by Mirio, that feeling deep in his gut of worry did not exactly fade. He flinched as the door to the office slid open without prompting at their arrival to reveal Nezu sitting comfortably at his desk with his paws clasped in front of him. "Good afternoon. I am so glad you could join me. Care for some tea?" Tamaki was quick to shake his head in denial. "I'm fine. No need to trouble yourself." Mirio patted him reassuringly on the shoulder as he confidently met their principal's gaze. "Why don't you tell us why you wanted to talk with us first?" Nezu smiled. "Ah, that is simple. I was hoping you would all three be open to taking an alternative final practical this semester. I find myself in need of a couple fake vigilantes for the first-year hero course students' heroes versus villains practical. They are going to be taking the final exam that you will be having next semester, so consider this a bit of a free preview of what is to come for that. If you agree, you will have to take your written exam, either this afternoon or early tomorrow morning, so you can enter the foe city for the entirety of the exam, unless one of the villains removes you from the game. I would be setting the three of you up with an apartment in the city to operate out of for the week. However, you will not be provided with your hero costumes for the sake of realism, so you will need to pack clothes accordingly. Yuo will be happy to reimburse you for any damaged clothing as a result after the test." Nejire was nodding along excitedly. "Oh, that sounds like so much fun, but doesn't it seem a little mean to put a bunch of first years up against us?" Nezu hummed. "If it was any other group, I would agree, but Aizawa's one of this year is a bit different than most first-year classes. That being said, I would appreciate it if you would refrain from taking down Midoriya Izuku as a villain yourselves, unless one of the hero teams officially recruits you into their agency. He is being graded under different criteria from the rest of the villain students, since he would be considered an at-risk hero student by the commission." Mirio gave him a puzzled look. "At risk? At risk for what? Villainy?" Nezu nodded. "All heroes and hero students that are discovered to have villains in their family background are flagged for monitoring by the HPSC. Midoriya just happens to have the misfortune of a connection to the peerless thief thanks to his mother's informally adoptive family. Since his mother was only fostered and not adopted formally, he wasn't immediately flagged, and he still technically isn't, but if the commission does realize their mistake in writing off the connection, it could hurt him later on. I am hopeful that his results in this test, while on the villain team, should clear him of any need of close monitoring by them later on. Personally, I have never liked their system for handling such things, since it has ruined many a hero hopeful's career before they have a chance to prove themselves. After all, it seems excessive to judge a person based on what a great-great-grandfather did when all living members of the family are perfectly upstanding citizens." Nejire winced at that. Poor kid. He would get kicked from heroics for just that. Nezu gave another solemn nod. "Like I said, I have no fondness for how they like to do things." Atsuhiro grinned happily to himself as he waved the special ID card that Nezu had issued him as an actor for the event, as nerve-wracking as meeting with him had gone. What with the chimera making it perfectly clear that he knew some of the less-than-legal shit he had gotten up to over the years, Atsuhiro had been cheerfully cleared to join the exercise. Having an actual villain on the villain team will most certainly make for an exciting learning experience for the students. Nezu leaned forward, paws threaded together in front of him. His grin turned predatory. The air suddenly felt heavy. "Just remember that this is still just a game. If one of my students is harmed because of you, know that there will be no place you can hide from me, Mr. Compress." Then he leaned back and the pressure was gone. A smile. "I look forward to seeing how you perform." Atsuhiro shivered slightly at the memory as he slipped into the testing site alongside the other actors. He took stock of the city around him as it began to come to life. He needed to figure out where his apartment for the test would be so he could lead the villain team back to it so young Hatsune would be able to set up her workstation. His own request for a place to stay for the week with a safe workspace for her being granted with the understanding that the reinforced and soundproofed room would be completely covered with cameras and have a direct line to the teachers on staff so 𝗃𝗯 could monitor things appropriately. And that as the adult, he would be the only one that could open the electronic locks on the door to the room. A fact that had made Atsuhiro shiver from the way Izuku had positively lit up to that revelation. Atsuhiro had a sneaking suspicion that would probably not be a good thing for the other team. 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗲 Yuga yawned slightly, as the hero teams of 1A and 1B settled in around the table feeling slightly jealous of his villain teammates, and the hero ones around him. This was worse than being an actual spy. As a real spy, he wasn't normally forced to do twice the work of everyone else. If it wasn't for Midoriya doing all the assigned paperwork for him on the villain side of things to make up for having to work basically overtime to play spy for him, Yuga would have just outed himself as a villain team member by the end of the first few days of preparation. He noted slightly bored that both hero team leaders, the other being Kendo, their class rep, were chatting about who all was missing from the other class rosters, as if they were not just about to be basically handed a list that told them exactly that in a few minutes. He was admittedly a bit excited to see their reactions when they realized that both villain teams had combined, and that there were more villains than the head count implied. Principal NEZU finally entered the room, followed by Aizawa-sensei and Vlad-sensei carrying stacks of folders. "Good morning, heroes. Are you all ready for your case debriefing? Because this one is a bit of a doozy." NEZU hopped up onto a chair that had been set up next to the projector screen at the end of the room as the classes quieted down. The lights clicked off and NEZU clicked the remote in his paw to start the slideshow that Midoriya and Monoma had worked so hard to make look professional. "It seems that we have discovered a new villain group calling themselves the Hands of Fate running around in US City." A click to reveal a faked security camera picture of Midoriya in his villain costume as strength breaking into his own apartment, quirk sparking around him on full display as he seemed to be using it to smash the door open. Another click to show Shinso as Judgment, basically the same outfit as Midoriya, just palette swapped to lavender, and with yellow accents in place of the green and red of his, and his own mask, holding a gun to the head of an out-of-costume present Mike, who apparently had been game to play victim for the photoshoot that had been tied up and gagged to pose for a kidnapping hostage photo. As NEZU clicked through the next couple of photos, Yuga found himself stifling a laugh at Mike-sensei's clear overacting for the pictures, as a few snickers broke out around the room at them. It was clear that some of the others in the room also found it equally amusing. While we don't have as many faces and real names as we have confirmed and rumored members, the police have compiled this list from those we have been able to identify. First, we have Kota Koji aka the Hermit. Quirk Anivoice. He can use his quirk to control animals around him. That includes using them to collect information to sell off to the highest bidder. A picture of him in his villain costume, basic black button-down and dark green pants under a hooded and feathered cloak like a few others had chosen, as well as his mask, was juxtaposed next to his student ID photo used as a headshot. A click. Shoji Mizo aka the Chariot. Quirk Dupli Arms. Known drug runner for the group, and one of the group's muscles. Shoji's villain outfit was basically off-the-rack looking military pants and boots, and a plain tank top that his balaclava was tucked into the top of. His mask rested comfortably over his face. A click. Jiro Kyoka aka the World. Quirk Earphone Jack. Like Kota, she specializes in info brokering and blackmail. She was basically just in her hero costume with just the addition of the mask. The only real change was her top being swapped for a gray one. Click. Todoroki Shoto aka Temperance. Quirk half cold half hot. Wanted for arson and the murder of his father, the pro-hero Endeavor. There were a few gasps around the room at the choice of charges that Todoroki had gone with. Yuga had to stifle a laugh, though, as he saw the picture of him in villain costume, another palette swap of Midoriya's only with white and ice blue and no coat. His vest, hat, and gloves had embroidery of snowflakes and flames, stitched in a pattern around the edges for the appropriate side, and was reminded of how the other boy had spotted Sako's mask with the eye patch design that immediately called dibs on it on the basis it matched his scar. He is one of the most dangerous of the known members of the group, so I would strongly advise against trying to take him down in a one-on-one scenario. Click. Midoriya Izuku aka Strength, formerly Deku. Quirk Superpower. He is also wanted in regards to Endeavor's murder, as well as the massacre of his sidekicks. and is known to be the main muscles of the group alone, with a litany of other smaller charges that you will be able to read up on later in the packet that is being passed around. Like Todoroki, as a hero killer, he is to be considered extremely dangerous if confronted. Yuga watched a few of his classmates pale in the dark, as it seemed to finally click that they were going to have to fight the absolute feral monster that Midoriya had become during the sports festival. However, the clear shake that Ida had developed as a result of Midoriya's title of hero killer was interesting to notice. As he took a mental note of it, he suddenly remembered that Ida's older brother had nearly been killed by Stain just weeks before. Oh, yeah, there was no way that Midoriya had not chosen to do that intentionally. So much for Monoma reigning in his psychological torture impulse that the guy apparently had. Yuga suddenly had to wonder how it was that the guy was supposedly All Might's successor according to what All for One had said, when he clearly would have fit right in with All for One's crowd. A click drew him back into the present. Yaoyorozu Momo aka the High Priestess. Quirk creation. Wanted in relation to drug creation and smuggling. We believe she is using her quirk to create the new hit drug on the streets called Destiny, or at least to create the equipment necessary for the manufacturing of the high-end psychedelic. She was dressed in a flowing plain black backless dress, but practical running shoes. Like the rest of the girls, she had declined wearing the balaclava under her mask, and her hair was pulled up in its signature fashion, revealing a pair of sparkling diamond earrings. Click. 𝐬𝐡𝐷 the Emperor. Quirk Weld. A cleaner for the group. His quirk has been linked to a handful of recovered bodies fished out of nearby bodies of water, him having used it to tie the bodies down to a large weight. As several of his classmates turned slightly green at the description, Yuga silently was amused to realize the boy had used his normal headband pattern of the hat he wore of his costume, a detail that had slipped by him before in his exhaustion during their meetup to decide costumes. Other than that, he was much like most of the boys in the group, in that he was wearing a palette swap of the look they had decided on with Midoriya, his being a deep royal blue-white like his headband as accent. Click. Kaibara-sen Ake the Sun. Quirk Gyrate. Breaking and entering specialist. He is wanted in regards to several millions yen of stolen goods. His palette swap was purely gray and silver, but his gloves were replaced with the special finger guards from his hero costume. Click. Kiruwaro Shihai Ake the Moon. Quirk Black. Kaibara's partner in breaking and entering. He wore an all-black palette swap of the outfit, with one of the feathered cloaks in place of the hat and coat, the only white on him being the white from his mask, peeking out from under his raised hood. Click. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Kosai Ake Justice. Quirk Solid Air. Another one of the group's enforcers, often seen paired off with other members and trained as a sniper. He wore an outfit more in line with that of Shoji, off-the-rack military, though his was more angled towards being urban camo, and he had a jacket. His quirk being what it was, his mask sat askew on the side of his head like a festival mask, being casually worn over his uncovered hair. He was pointedly carrying the sniper rifle that Midoriya had suggested he try to get extra trained with snipe, for it was slung over his shoulder in the villain surveillance shot. Click. Takage Setsuna Ake the Empress. Quirk Lizard Tail Splitter. Oasis partner. She keeps lookout while he cleans up the mess. She was dressed similarly to Gyro in a casual punk style, with purple boots and top under her black leather jacket. Like 𝐬𝗵𝗲, her mask was pushed to the side since she had seen little point in wearing it correctly with how often she would be using her quirk to split off her eyes and ears to spy on people. Click. Monoma Nido Aka Wheel of Fortune or Chance, as we have heard a few call him. Quirk Copy. A jack of all trades in the organization, as far as we can tell, and one of the leader's right hands. Has been seen committing crimes as minor as breaking and entering, but as major as assisting in the Endeavor Agency massacre. Yuga had to fight back a snort at his villain persona picture, as did a few others who clearly failed at the sight of it. Monoma in his costume formal black and white except for the accent of a pastel blue tie and hat band with black polka dots, practically falling backwards from how far he was dramatically bending back in a redemption of his villain laugh was far too comical. Especially since the mask on his face hid just what he was doing. Yuga wondered if the silly picture had been an intentional choice to lighten the mood as his rap sheet was read off. Click. Yanagi Ryuko aka the Star. Quirk Poltergeist. In comparison, her recorded crimes are rather minor. Just pickpocketing and a shoplifting. Still, her link to the organization is clear, so she is to be held under the suspicion of a possible link to other members' crimes. She wore a long black coat with a white fluffy collar reminiscent of the coats that most of the guys wore over a plain long black top and ripped leggings. Her silvery bangs half spilling over the black half of her mask. The star on it almost completely obscured. Click. Shiozaki Ibara aka the Hierophant. Quirk Vines. No actual recorded crimes, but has been clearly linked to the group as a fervent supporter of the group's leaders, often acting as their herald. Most of what we know about their leaders is thanks to her. She was dressed in basically just a black version of her hero costume, with the white mask over her face seeming extra angelic above it. Click. Which leads us to Takoyami Fumikage aka the Devil, though we have also had reports of him being referred to as lovers. We suspect the inconsistency there is a result of his quirk Dark Shadow's sentience. As such, lovers might just be the code name for his quirk that the group uses. He has been linked to a series of murders over the last few months, which was what kicked off our original investigation into the group. He should be considered extremely dangerous like the hero killers. Like Gyro and Shiozaki, he was mostly just in his hero costume, the cloak just being exchanged for the feathery hooded one to up the drama factor. In the picture, only the devil side of his mask was on display, all black with a white pentagram for an eye to juxtapose to the all-white side with a black heart for an eye on the other, as he was posed in costume facing off to the right side of the picture. Click to reveal another picture of Judgment's mask staring down a camera. That being said, there remains those we only know from a handful of sightings and by word of mouth. Pictured here is the one we only know as Judgment. Quirk currently unknown. What little we do know about him is that he is evidently the other right hand of the leaders, and his word the others carry out as law. Like Monoma, he goes where he is needed, so has a record to match. He is the final person we have as definitively linked to the Endeavor Agency massacre. As for the other members, we have only fragmentary information. That being said, we do have one more lead on a member. He clicked to the next slide, revealing a picture of Sako posing for a security camera in full colorful villain costume. This is Mr. Compressed. From his mask and dress, it is safe to assume he is one of the currently unseen, unidentified members, though he has never been seen in association with another member. Normally, he would be considered just a petty thief, but the association is concerning. That being said, we do know for a fact he is not the member we only know from word of mouth, as the fool purely due to the fact that when other members of the organization have mentioned her in passing, it was with clear gendered terms. As such, it seems likely that the Zero or 𝐍𝐴 that they talk about are also her based on their group's overall theming and context. She is wanted as the primary suspiler of the group's illegal support items and for the creation of an explosive from a bombing linked to the group. That just leaves the Magician and the Hanged Man as well as the co-leaders of the group, the Tower and Death. Frankly, outside of the names and the genders of the first two, we have no leads for you. That being said, as some of you might have already picked up on, the Hands of Fate all take their names from the faces of the major arcana from a tarot card deck. Assuming that the likely titles are not random, then it is likely that we can infer that the two leaders took the names of the cards they felt best matched them. As such, I feel it prudent to mention the most common interpretations of the cards. In the upright state, death could mean not only the literal meaning, but also endings, transformation and transition to something new. But in the reverse implies resistance to change, an inner transformation or inner purging. The Tower, on the other hand, in the upright speaks of sudden change and upheaval, chaos, revelation, and awakenings, while reversed also signals personal transformation, as well as fear of change and averting disaster. With all of that, and the words that Shiozaki have said about the group, well, their ultimate goal seems to be one of destroying the current system of doing things to rebuild the city under their control. You could have heard a pin drop in the room as NEZU finished. Then the room erupted into chaos. There are 21 of them. Where did those extra members even come from? The only ones missing here were the ones that were named. Fucking forget that. Who the fuck are the villain team leaders? Seeing the opportunity that Midoriya had asked him to watch for, Yuga cut it. You don't think the mystery team members are among us, do you? Spying on us? The silence that fell upon them all in the wake of his questions was deafening. As everyone began to look at everyone else, but Kirishima and Kendo with clear suspicion, it was obvious the seed that Midoriya had wanted planted in the group had swiftly taken root. WGO Nito sighed as he paused to take a break from hauling shit up the stairs. Nito knew why he and Midoriya had picked the building to set up their base in, but surely they could have picked a lower floor for their main space. As he panted slightly from the exertion, he glared at the duffel bag of special ammunition. They couldn't risk 𝐀𝐦 compressing it since trying so with the first batch had ended explosively with how unstable it was. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 was a mad genius, but one of her biggest flaws as a team member was that her work was basically incompatible with 𝐀𝐦's quirk. So of course her lab had to be in his apartment several blocks away. As a result, as she knocked out production of all the equipment that they needed for stage 1 of the plan, they were having to haul it back to base by hand without trying to get spotted as suspicious by the civilians, so they wouldn't report their comings and goings to the heroes after they arrived on site in an hour. That meant no obvious quirk use, so no borrowing Yanaga's quirk to float the bag behind him as he climbed the stairs. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 came to a stop beside him on his own climb. Chance, you good man?" 𝐁𝐸 waved him off. "Fine. My bag is just heavy." He frowned and set his own bag down to try and lift 𝐁𝐸's, and almost immediately fumbled and dropped it at the unexpected weight. "The fuck? What is in here, bricks? Why isn't Strength or Chariot carrying this?" 𝐁𝐸 groaned. "I might have made a rash decision to try and prove that I could handle anything Strength could. It is full of the tracker rounds and their receivers." He held out a hand to take the bag back. "Just 4 more flights." His classmate winced and passed it back. "I know you don't have to listen to me and all since you outrank me, but you should probably take a break and do something else once you get this up there." 𝐁𝐸 sighed and began to trudge up the stairs again. "I'll take over supervision of the unpacking." Suddenly, there was a flurry of fast steps before a shout below them in the steps rang out. "On your left." 𝐁𝐸 watched as Midoriya basically flew up the opening in the center of the stairwell, bouncing higher and higher as he ping-ponged back and forth up from rail to rail under the green sparking power of his quirk, carrying a duffel bag under each arm like it was nothing. The bastard. 𝐁𝐸 huffed and buckled down to force himself to the top. By the time 𝐻𝐴ce and he were opening the door to their floor, Midoriya had gone past 2 more times, once back down and once coming back up. The show-off. 𝐁𝐸 decided the worst part of all of it was the fact that as cool as his quirk would be to use, Midoriya was a blank because his quirk was a form of stockpiler. Midoriya looked up from where he had been setting down and unpacking his most recent load. "Oh hey Chance, Emperor. I was wondering how long it would be before you guys caught up." 𝐁𝐸 glared at the other boy before walking over to lightly swat at him as he set down his bag. "You know you could have stopped and grabbed our bags too." Midoriya rolled his eyes. "You were the one that said that you could carry it yourself." A few of the others working on setting up around the room snickered. 𝐁𝐸 glared at Gyro, Tsuburaba and Shinso, who he quickly identified as the sources. "Not a word. I control all of your fates, remember?" Shinso rolled his eyes. "Yeah, and so does Tower Death. I am pretty sure he won't let you sacrifice us as pieces so long as we have a part to play in his plan for chaos. Plus, with the exception of Justice here, we are cards from his hand, not yours." 𝐁𝐸 was torn between annoyance that he was right and a happiness that had bubbled up with Shinso leaning into the card and game metaphor as fit his role in the game. "Still, I can make your lives hell so long as you are in the game." Midoriya threw a protein bar from the table he was at. "Take a break and have a snack. Your low blood sugar from burning all those calories is making you cranky." 𝐁𝐸 reflexively caught it before giving him a glare. "I am not cranky." Still, he ripped it open and ate it. He was hungry after all. WGO. As Hisashi settled in to help monitor the test for a bit alongside Shouta, Kan, Majima, NEZU, and All Might, since technically one of his students was participating as well, and like hell was he missing the show. His son participating in it or not, Majima cursed and picked up the phone beside him. On the display for the small support lab, a phone rang that a man Hisashi didn't recognize, but assumed from context was Sako. Picked it up with a tired sigh, not even bothering to raise it to his ear. He turned to Majima's student and blandly spoke. "Zippy, power loader," said no. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 huffed and stopped working on whatever she had been doing, beginning to take it apart. Sako nodded and put the phone back down on the receiver. Shouta gave a snort of amusement as Majima put the phone back down on the hook, before adding a tally to the sheet of paper in front of himself with a sigh. There were already a lot of those, and 𝐻𝐡𝐚 could have only been there for 4 hours at this point. Hisashi gave the man a questioning look. "What was that all about?" Majima, not tearing his eyes from the screen, sighed. "She is working on building a bomb for a plan the villains have later. It is supposed to be just a glitter bomb, so we can tag people as dead without anyone actually getting hurt. But she keeps trying to add real explosives to up the effective range." Well, that was mildly concerning. "Is she not worried about hurting the other students?" "No, not even remotely," he sighed. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 always puts 110% into everything she works on, so dialing down the yield of the explosive when given the request to make the biggest glitter bomb she could is not sitting well with her, despite knowing full well why I keep telling her no. It doesn't exactly help that she doesn't view explosions as a big deal with how often she blows stuff up accidentally. Ken huffed. It is making it painfully obvious why she was recruited from outside the hero course to play villain by Midoriya though. Hisashi saw All Might wince at the reminder that his kid was playing villain. Hisashi didn't care what the guy said. He had seen the two of them together. Midoriya was his kid, no matter how much he denied it. It was clear that he was uncomfortable with NEZU's decision to name Midoriya as a villain team leader regardless of his understanding as to why he had. It probably didn't help that the preparation work for the test showed that he was probably going to be good at it too. Hisashi decided to leave the poor guy be and turn to his husband. So anything else exciting I might have missed? 𝐲𝐴 shrugged and pointed to the monitor displaying their son chatting with Monoma as they helped set up the villain team lunch. Nothing test-related, but I am sure you would find the fact that Monoma isn't exactly denying Hitoshi's teasing him about having a crush on Midoriya interesting. With only half an hour left until the hero teams would enter the city, Ijiro found himself in an emergency meeting with Kendo. She was pacing back and forth in thought. So we have at least one traitor each hidden among our ranks, assuming the other 4 unaccounted for villain team members are all from outside our classes. That immediately threw Ijiro. Wait, from outside our classes? They can do that? She paused in her pacing. There was nothing in the rules that said that they couldn't. Actually, the opposite, given the rules explained how they could possibly recruit the civilian actors to the group after everything started. Given what little we know about this Mr. Compressed guy, he was probably a plant on their part in the actors. A friend of one of our classmates willing to join in for the week. That sparked a memory of Ijiro. Oh, he's probably Midoriya's cousin. He mentioned him in passing in our class since the planning for this started a few times. He is a professional magician like most of their family apparently. That probably makes him the magician if the code names aren't random. She nodded. Yeah, that sounds likely. That would explain how he was able to get a job among the actors on such short notice too. She rubbed the back of her neck. I have a guess about who the fool likely is too. From the sounds of things it sounds likely that they picked up a support student too. That just leaves Judgment and the Hanged Man as either Gen Ed or spies with the villain team leaders hidden in our teams. Do you have any suspects from your class? Because I don't. Up until now I was pretty sure that Monoma was the villain team leader for our class. But that makes sense if he was who the real one was using to lead by proxy. Ijiro shook his head. No, not really. I thought for a while that the whole tower thing was just Tokoyami being dramatic pretending he wasn't actually the villain team leader, but obviously I was way off on that one. There are a couple people I am pretty sure are not secret villains though. Ashido and Mainta namely. The first is just because I have known her since junior high, so I can tell she is being honest about being on my team, and Mainta, because the whole reason Yaoyorozu and Jiro joined the villain team was to avoid him. Kendo sighed. If only it was that simple for me. Unfortunately, given that Shiozaki joined the villain team despite my original assumption that she was a given for my own team, it is painfully clear I don't know my classmates nearly as well as I thought. Ijiro winced at that. Okay, but to be fair, I am pretty sure we all just assumed she would be on the hero team, like I really should have with Aoyama. She frowned. Aoyama? Oh, the guy who realized we probably had spies in our midst and pointed it out. He is kinda a weird guy and a bit of a loner in our class, so didn't rush my desk to join the hero team immediately. But I think part of the problem is that he might just have language difficulties, sometimes since he switches to only speaking French when tired. Kendo gained a look of understanding. Yeah, Tsunotori Pony from my class has similar issues. Only English is her first language. Okay, so he is another one for the probably not a suspect list then. Ijiro nods. And we can add her from your class. 𝐬𝐻 Yuga was slightly baffled as Kirishima pulled him Ashido and Mainta aside 5 minutes until the heroes could enter the arena, only to become even more bewildered as it was revealed that somehow he had accidentally made it onto the list of Kirishima's of classmates clear of suspicion for being a secret villain. Now he most certainly was not going to complain about that fact, even if he had less than zero idea how that he had been cleared so easily. Midoriya was going to get a kick out of this for sure. But now not only was he a spy on the hero team, but somehow he had accidentally become an inner circle member. As they entered the arena, Yuga peeled off from the main group, heading to their agency on one of the first patrols of the game as assigned to him by Kirishima out of that surprising bit of trust. It only took a few minutes for Gyro to peel herself from the shadows in an alley as he cut through it to hand him his communication equipment for his actual team. See about getting Tower the full schedule of patrols from 1A as soon as you can, and 1B if possible. Yuga snorted. Oh, that will be more than possible. Pass along the news that I managed to infiltrate the inner circle of safe heroes for the hero team leaders, so I will have unrestricted access to better watch for traitors among them. She laughed. Damn Wednesday, way to plus ultra it. Yuga gave a small sheepish shrug. To be honest, I am not quite sure how I managed it. All I know is it will make my moment in the spotlight all the more impactful. He was nearly back out on the street now. Talk to you later, Gaia. Later, hero. And just like that, she was gone again just as silently as she had appeared. Smiling to himself, Yuga exited the alley. He had a patrol to finish. WGO, they were starting small, but immediately upon game start, while they waited for preparations to finish for the real start to the game. Picking up the easy points before the heroes had a chance to really get themselves established. One successful drug deal. A bit of graffiti. Shoplifting. Pickpocketing. A mugging. Small stuff, just on a large scale as everyone, but a few key members were out doing it. Izuku being one of them as he found himself sitting atop Hatsume's lap as she whined about being kicked from her lap. It had been necessary since Izuku had needed to free up Atsuhiro to go case their major planned targets, taking advantage of the man's anonymity as one of the clear actors for the event. Still, while he was doing that, Izuku was left with Hatsume, unable to work on her projects for later since Power Loader did not trust her to be left alone, without any adult oversight after she had repeatedly tried to make a potentially actually lethal bomb to fulfill Izuku's own request for explosives for Act 2 of their show for the heroes. Izuku had tried to distract her by having her set up their communications hub in the staging base, but that had only worked for 5 minutes. That was why he had to resort to physically restraining her like this. And it had to be him given that he and Shoji were the only ones of their group actually physically stronger than her, with how much she lifted on the day-to-day building support gear. Between that and the fact he was one of only a handful she vaguely listened to, and, well, it just had to be him. You don't really have to do this 10 mil. It was just one little bomb. Izuku didn't look up from the laptop on the floor in front of him. You could have actually killed someone. I'm sorry if I find that just as concerning as the teachers. This is just a game. He caught her pouting out of the corner of his eye as he had to shift his laptop just out of her reach again. Come on. I can hack into the hero network too. I do it all the time. Izuku paused in his typing to turn and look back at her. Wait, are you telling me that you regularly hack into the actual Heranet? She hummed and used his shock to reach past him and pull the laptop into his lap before reaching around him on either side and beginning to type. Oh yeah, it's super easy if a bit boring, but I get all sorts of great ideas for new babies from stuff on there. Izuku was absolutely stunned at the causal admittance to the major crime. Hatsume, that's illegal. Nah, if I was going to get arrested for it, I am pretty sure NEZU wouldn't have just asked that I stop doing it on campus during class. Izuku had to take a moment to process that he might have accidentally actually recruited a potential villain in the making. Okay, besides the hacking and bomb making, is there anything else blatantly illegal that you get up to on the regular? As she stopped typing for a second and seemed to have to think about it, Izuku cut her off. Never mind, I don't actually want to know. She giggled. I don't think it was all too bad. I mean, compared to some of the stuff you have planned, it really isn't. Izuku groaned and rubbed his face. You have a problem, you know that, right? Your impulse control when it comes to illegal things. She gave another giggle and went back to typing, her head now resting on his shoulder. Yeah, I know, but life is more fun this way, so why stop myself? WGO Tamaki was the first of the three of them to realize the issue standing in their apartment for the next week. Wait, do either of you know what this Midoriya kid actually looks like? NEZU never showed us a picture. Nejire tapped her chin in though. No, I don't think so. Mirio also shook his head. No, but I am pretty sure that was intentional on his part. This is our final exam too. He is probably testing our investigative skills by only giving us the name to work off of. Tamaki sighed and slumped down with his duffel bag for the week to the floor. That figures. At least you have some knowledge of how to do that right from your time with Sir Nightai. Mirio gave his bright sunny smile. Yep, I guess we know what we are doing first as vigilantes. 𝐀𝐦 gave a small cheer. We so total have this. We won't accidentally help the heroes catch Midoriya, and we will help them stop their evil deeds. Suddenly a thought hit Tamaki. Oh, it's a handicap for us. So we don't just take out the whole villain team in one go. Mirio smiled and pulled him into a side hug. There is the self-confidence in you we have been looking for. Tamaki flushed and buried his face in his hands. I mean, it is less self-confidence and more acknowledgement that we have 2 years of experience over all of them. 𝐀𝐦 joined in the hug from Tamaki's other side, making a Tamaki sandwich. Yeah, but the you of 2 years ago never would have said something that bold. Tamaki sandwich. His stomach growled at the thought, earning a laugh from his 2 best friends as they teasingly poked at him as he felt his face just get hotter. Mirio gave him an extremely amused look. Well, I was going to ask what you 2 wanted to do next, but Tamaki's stomach has spoken. Let's go get that lunch now. 𝗲𝗲𝗲𝗲𝗲 Nito's heart sank as he spotted Midoriya and 𝐻𝐡𝐚 upon his return. Cuddling. He had been afraid of that. That Midoriya was in a relationship with someone else already. That he preferred women. It wasn't that he disapproved of the match, given that as far as the girls went, 𝐻𝐡𝐚 was by far the most attractive one of the group in his book, and was an intellectual match for Midoriya, with the same sort of chaotic energy. Nito paused in that train of thought, and he mentally worked down the list of things he liked about her next to his list of things he had found in Midoriya. Not bad on the eyes, clever, fun to be around, could totally bench press him. Okay, the last one was less important of a qualifier for dating material for him, but the fact that both of them were fully capable of the feat was not an unattractive quality. He was forced to admit she was just the pink female support course variant on Midoriya, now that he thought about it. Wait. Shit. Midoriya jumped slightly in 𝐻𝐡𝐚's lap. Death, judgment, is there something wrong? 𝗫𝐿 patted him on the shoulder as he walked past Nito. Nah, Chance just figured something out I did a while back. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 finally looked up. Oh, is that why he was just standing in the doorway like that for so long? Nito winced at being called out and finally entered the room, blushing wildly. Sorry. Midoriya looked at him slightly puzzled. Oh, what did you realize? Nito really did not want to answer that question. After all, what kind of guy just comes out and admits to crushing on both members of a couple? When he took a bit too long to answer, 𝗫𝐿 snorted. Well, I would say he was having a bit of gay panic. It wasn't for the fact I know he knows he likes guys from bothering him earlier, so it was probably by panic when he realized he has a crush on 𝐻𝐡𝐚 here too. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 gave Nito an odd look before turning to 𝗫𝐿. 2 as in, he has a crush on someone else, or 2 as in you have a crush on me as well? 𝗫𝐿 shrugged and fell into one of the chairs. Can't it be both? For the record, I am both bi and poly, and think everyone currently in the room is dating material. Midoriya sputtered out a noise of disbelief and immediately hid his face in his hands. But I am not that attractive? I have, like, the most boring face out there? Nito cut in before he could stop himself. Have you even seen yourself in the mirror when your shirt is off? 𝐻𝐡𝐚 laughed and poked at Midoriya's stomach as she set the laptop aside. He has a point tower. I mean, I know I have abs, but even my stomach has a bit of squish to it. You are like hugging a muscly statue. 𝗫𝐿 snickered. Yeah, I think Monoma here just has a thing for people who are buffer than him. Nito flushed. That isn't the only qualifier. I like someone who can hold an intelligent conversation with me too, and you can't deny that they are both some of the smartest people in our year, even if their areas of expertise are generally rather specific. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 considered that for a moment before shrugging. Okay, I can live with that. She turned to give Nito a questioning look. Hey, out of curiosity, do you maybe like Judge too? Or is that just a one-way thing? I'm only asking because I'm always up to trying new things. Nito, feeling very lost, immediately turned to the smug bastard from 1C. The one he was beginning to realize had been flirting with him since basically they had met. The guy who basically had met none of his own mentally listed qualifiers. None except one. Stop that. Nito lightly swatted at him, the smug bastard, as his smirk just got wider. He chuckled with his wonderful voice that did not belong with his stupid face. I'm not hearing no tilde, as he tackled the jerk to the floor and pinned him down to earn a kinky from the other boy. 𝐻𝐡𝐚 poked at Midoriya. Hey, are you good? Midoriya nodded and forced himself to take a few calming breaths. You all like me? 𝐻𝐡𝐚 hummed. Yeah, and probably each other too. You don't have to if you don't want to, but the way I see it, The easiest way to work out our feelings would just be to date all of each other at once. Midoriya was still flushed as he looked between them all as if considering them in a new light. Sure. What now though? Shinso snorted from his place still below Nito. Basically same as normal, except more cuddling and hand-holding. Oh, and we get to do this to each other. His lips collided with Nito's own. As Hisashi gave a small cheer at the side on the camera, that they had all found themselves focusing on given the drama of it, and the fact that everything seemed to be smoothly for the other villains, and the heroes were clueless still. 𝐲𝐴 sighed and rubbed his hand over his face. Of all the people he could have picked, the three biggest problem children of the other classes. All Might gave him a puzzled look, looking away from his kid on the screen as he tentatively had his first kiss with the girl whose arms he had been sitting in for nearly an hour. Pardon, Ken snorted. Shinso is his and Mike's adopted son in case you missed that fact. He is just worried that if it works out for all four of them, he just gained the other three as future in-laws. Katsuki couldn't decide if he was insulted or not about Shitty Hair thinking he might be the secret villain leader. On one hand, it meant that Shitty Hair thought he would be a good villain like all those extras started saying after the sports festival, but on the other it meant that he thought Katsuki was clever enough to follow all of the class. It is not that I don't want to trust you, Bakubro, but given some of the stuff Midabro said about the villain team leader and how he was recruited, your history with him kinda makes you a suspect. I mean, I'm not sure anyone but you knew about the magic stuff with his family to recruit him for that, so unless he freely offered that about himself when getting recruited, you are sort of the only one who would have known. Katsuki scoffed. He could have mentioned it the first day when Earlobes talked with him. Seriously, though, how the fuck are Gilterbomb and Rack and Eyes free of suspicion? Shitty Hair shrugged. Well, Mina and I go way back like you and Midoriya do, so I am pretty sure I could tell if she was lying as much as I am sure you could probably tell with him. Aoyama I am pretty sure has language difficulties, so I doubt the teachers would have picked him for villain leader. And why not the other four unaccounted for? Kendo and I are pretty sure they have to all be from outside our classes. Mr. Compress is clearly one of the actors for the event and Fool is pretty obviously a support student. We think that Hanged Man is probably another support or Gen Ed with judgment who might be trying to use this as a way of transferring in. It explains why Mike Sensei helped them with their photoshoot since he is 1C's homeroom teacher. Personally, my money is on him also being support since they generally work in teams. Okay, Katsuki did have to concede a point there. He thought back to the image of judgment in his purple and yellow and mentally tried to recall if any of the Gen Ed extras had done well enough in the sports festival to make recruiting them appealing for the villains only to come up empty. He did, however, remember the crazy support chick that had teamed up with Deku in the second round and went on to make a fool out of glasses before disqualifying herself. I think that fool might be the crazy support girl from the sports festival that worked with Deku, goth and round cheeks. Shitty Hair brightened. Oh, that is actually a good point. It would explain the villain team in with the support students anyways. I'll have to call over to Ken. He was cut off as an alarm began to blaze over the agency intercom as Raccoon Eye's voice rang out over the system. We are getting reports of a massive bombing in the city center halfway between A and B agencies. Katsuki didn't even look to Shitty Hair for guidance. He was already running out the door to respond. As he shoved open the front door, he saw the massive plume of smoke and had a moment of panic as he wondered if the idiots had used an actual bomb. But there had been no massive bang like he would have known there would be if it was real. He was a living bomb himself after all. 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵 Tamaki stared down at his two friends from his place, seated on the sidewalk in shock, as they played dead, looking embarrassed. Mirio especially given his quirk. Their entire fronts were painted in bright red glitter from the bomb that they had apparently accidentally found and had been carrying. They had spotted the bag being forgotten by one of the actors at the outdoor restaurant they had been eating at, so Mirio and Nejier had decided to go after him to return the bag while Tamaki finished eating. They had not made it far when the bag exploded, killing them both and everyone in a 5-meter radius and injuring everyone in 20. All the actors in the 6 buildings closest to it were quickly filing out so that NEZU could remotely collapse the buildings safely and then return to the rubble to either be saved or play dead as they were instructed. Tamaki had completely lost an arm, not that it was really an issue with his quirk. He could regrow it fast enough, having just been sitting at the edge of the center radius of the explosion. He had only survived because Mirio and Nejier had been directly between him and the explosion, so had reduced the damage. He huffed and buried his face in his hands. You two just had to leave me all alone, didn't you? Mirio reached up to pat him on the shoulder. Hey, you've got this. We'll be cheering for you from beyond the grave. Tamaki sighed. Mirio, dead people don't talk. His smile turned sheepish again. Before Tamaki could think more about that, there was a series of rapidly approaching bangs as one of the hero students literally flew into the sight with his explosive quirk. He spotted Tamaki sitting over two very red bodies and quickly came down to land next to him. Hey, what the fuck happened? Tamaki shook nervously, not wanting to deal with this right now. He gestured at the remains of the bag, and the canister all the glitter has exploded out of the top of. Bomb. My friends and I saw a guy leave his bag behind while we were eating lunch, and they were trying to follow him to return it when it went off. The other hero students were appearing now, fishing any survivors from the ruins and the street as emergency vehicles began to appear. The explosive guy quickly turned to the others. I've got a living witness to the bomber bleeding out over here. He cursed and pressed his hand to where Tamaki's missing arm was in reaction to the description of Tamaki's injury that was relayed to him over the student-teacher comm network. Can you tell me what the guy looked like? Tamaki forced himself to swallow down his nerves like fat gum had been trying to help him with. Roughly 180 centimeters. Plain face and short brown hair. Somewhere between late 20s and early 30s. He was wearing an orange button-down under a black vest and matching pants. He had white boots too, I think. The other student cursed as a girl in a vaguely space-themed pink suit ran up with a first aid kit. He turned to her. Mr. Compress was the one who set the bomb. The witness got a decent look at him without his mask. She nodded. Bakugo, can you pull off your glove? The material will help absorb the blood while I get him over to the ambulance. Don't bother, just make him lighter, and I'll carry him over myself. Focus on getting the rubble off of people, dumbass. 𝗬𝗲 Hitoshi took a deep breath to steady himself as he watched the heroes swarming the scene to pick out his target. He was not the best sniper out of the group. That was just as hands down with his breath control from using his quirk. Still, this was the moment that Tower had built up for him from the start. He closed his eyes and took one last breath as death counted them down. Judgment opened his eyes and lined up his scope with his target. The final count. 3, 2, 1. He squeezed the trigger in unison with three others, as their targets' chests exploded from the paintballs impacting them. 𝐬𝐻 screamed in shock as the surviving vigilante immediately relaxed and fell back to the ground, clearly relieved that he wouldn't be stuck alone without his partners for the rest of the week. But that was not what Judgment was focused on. Grape Juice was curled up in a ball on the ground, now clutching his crotch, having been shot there by World, while he had gone for the fatal blow. It took him a moment to find the target Tower had picked for Magician as one of opportunity, given he had joined the sniper team on the off chance that Tagata had survived the initial explosion. Ah, there, Javaden from 1B. That made sense given the other boy's sense of smell from his quirk beast could have become an issue with some of the later plans. He pulled back from his roof edge to pack up his gun as more shouts of panic rang out. A few rooftops over Death hopped up on the edge in his all-black version of his outfit, with one of the feather cloaks tossed over top. He switched his modulator's vocal feed inside his mask to the speakers they had set up in advance for the beginning of Stage 2. Judgment quickly began to roof hop to get to that one alongside both Magician, Justice and World, falling into flank death as Magician compressed all the gun cases. My apologies, heroes, but I am afraid that their times were up. I do rather hate it when people are late for their final appointments. It often throws off the whole schedule for everyone, and is awfully inconvenient for everyone involved. There was a shout from the street level. Who the fuck are you? Death cocked his head slightly. Why, Death, of course. Who else would wish to oversee the exit of so many lives? Oh, well, I suppose my counterpart Tower might as well, but he is elsewise occupied for the real start of the show. There was a crackle over the radio as both Chariot and Hermit gave the all clear. Speaking of, abruptly every building lining the street that divided the fake city in two dropped as Tower joined him on the roof edge in his more formal-looking black suit. Looking more like a businessman than anything if it wasn't for the masks and gloves hiding every inch of his skin and hair. He gave a dark chuckle, his voice modulated as well, but in a less artificially sounding way, merely dropping it deeper. Now, Death, what did I say about having fun without me? There was another round of explosions and buildings dropping, as the other members cleared another zone of actors, widening the gap between the two hero groups. Even without seeing his face, Judgment knew Death rolled his eyes. Still, he stuck to the script. I thought a little early detonation on one bomb wouldn't hurt to set the stage. Besides, those vigilantes you were worried about nearly moved it too far from position. Another hair-raising chuckle from Tower as the pressure he gave off seemed to lock the heroes in place. Oh, I hardly was worried about them. I merely thought they would run the risk of throwing a few things off schedule. Do you know how you hate that, my dear Tilda? Everyone on the roof was slightly stunned as Tower took one of Death's hands in his and raised it up to where his mouth was behind the mask, as if to kiss the back of it. Where the hell was the nervous, blushing wreck of Midoriya Izuku under all of that smooth villain confidence? Hitoshi felt slightly bad for the other three with him on the roof with them, since they hadn't really had a chance to warn anyone of the change in their relationship statuses. Death scoffed and pulled his hand back. Like you care about that. Chaos is what you live for. That had him chuckle again. Ah, too true. Finally, one of the heroes seemed to force themselves out of it. Ingenium. Just who do you think you are? Tower flicked his hand to reveal a full deck of tarot cards that he began to shuffle. We are those who wish to use the hands that fate has dealt us to reshuffle the deck. He pulled a card from the top to reveal the Fool upright. We will bring about a new start, a new card, the Devil upright, so that devils like us can walk out in the light without fear, or a new card, the Star reversed, falling into despair as your kind abandon us. He pulled Hitoshi's own card next in the upright alongside Justice. We are Absolution, the great equalizers. The people born of your system were born to show you the truth. We are monsters, but ones that you created. You have made your bed. Now I am afraid it is time for you to lie in it. He flicked his hands to clear them for the audience below. That being said, I am not without mercy. He turned to Death. I think it is only fair to give them time to mourn their dead and put their affairs in order, don't you? After all, the game is no fun if there is no one to play it with. Death tapped his chin. That is fair, I suppose. Besides, it is not any other their times yet. Collecting them early could throw things off just as easily as too late. Not that I expect you care all that much given your sneaking in 𝐲𝐸𝗏 while you thought I wasn't looking. Tower chuckled. Oh darn, you caught me. He bumped his mask up against the side of Death's face in another phantom kiss. I had hoped to sneak that one by you. They pulled back from the roof edge, walking over to the now changed Sako, who had ducked into the roof access door, and held out hands to start compressing them to slip away undetected, giving the pair a clear look. We are going to talk about all that improv later. Hitoshi's world slipped away before the pair could respond as one of the hands brushed up against him. 𝗍𝗲 Toshinori couldn't breathe. He was staring at the screen that up until seconds ago had held his boy. Except that very much had not been young Midoriya on the screen. Everything from the way his voice had been changed down to his mannerisms had screamed all for one to him. He had spoken with the same exact cadence and everything. The way he had planned and executed this level of destruction without a second thought. The way he stood above the destruction without a seeming care in the world. And the monologuing. For the first time since he had met his successor, he was left horrifyingly wondering just who the boy's father was. His stomach rolled with a worry that he might have given one for all to all for one's own blood family. After all, both young Midoriya's father and biological material grandparents were a massive unknown. A hand came down on his shoulder, jolting a breath out of him. Yo, Yagi, are you good, my dude? Toshinori turned to NEZU, ignoring Yamada, as a question reared its ugly head. You didn't name young Midoriya as a villain team leader just because of his mother's adoptive family, did you? NEZU offered an apologetic look. This cannot leave this room, but no, it was not. The young man Shigaraki from the 𝐴𝐡𝐢 came back as 72% genetic match for him, making him either his full brother or a half-brother through an unknown sibling of his mother, which given that unknown seems probable. Aizawa stiffened. You are testing him, not only because of the concern about him potentially going rogue, but because you are hoping for insight into how Shigaraki might think. NEZU gave a nod. That is one bonus, yes. Toshinori flicked his eyes back up to the screen, tracking Sako's movements back to the villain base. You don't think that the similarities between young Midoriya and him are a coincidence either, do you? NEZU threaded his paws together. It stands to reason that it is possible. He has been around a long enough time that young Midoriya and Shigaraki could just as easily be his great-great-grandsons as they could possibly be his sons directly. There are too many unknown factors there. Yamada slammed his hands on the table. What the hell are you two going on about? NEZU gave him and the others an apologetic look. The villain who gave All Might here his injury is roughly 2 centuries old at this point. Up until the first Namu appeared, we had assumed that he had died in the fight that had crippled Yogi. But now we are beginning to suspect he just went to ground to train his successor Shigaraki. The way that young Midoriya has seemed to have decided to carry himself is making a possible familial connection to him more and more likely. He turned to Aizawa. You might have heard of him before in your hero work, as the Bujiman of the underworld. He is only known by the name of All for One. His actual name is lost to history now. Izuku fidgeted nervously under the gaze of his elder cousin. Under the gazes of all of the villain team members, really. So, we might have decided to try dating while you were all out making preparations. Atsuhiro snorted. Yeah, I got that. You couldn't have at least warned us before deciding to openly flirt with one another as Death and Tower, though. Hitoshi cracked open an eye from where he had thrown himself on Mei's lap after they got back. Should probably clarify the whole poly thing too, while we're talking about it. As Izuku died inside with all the attention being on him, Nito rolled his eyes and slung an arm over his shoulder. We, that is Tower, Judge, Zippy and me, are all currently dating one another while we figure things out. If anyone has a problem with that, you can take it up with me. Gyro gave him a look of surprise. Huh, didn't think you were into girls. Hitoshi snorted. He is making an exception for the one chick among us that could deadlift any of us. Mei shoved him off her lap. You make it sound like he is only interested in me because I don't do girly girl stuff. Hitoshi didn't even bother moving from his new place on the floor. I am just saying that I am pretty sure he is generally into people who are physically stronger than him. Kibara gave him a questioning look. Well, if that is the case, how do you factor into things? Hitoshi shrugged and cast a look up at Nito, who was blushing nearly as much as Izuku at that point from Hitoshi calling him out like that. Don't know. Why not ask him? Nito buried his face in his hands. The jerk has the same thirst for chaos that both Tower and Zippy do. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. He is sort of the one who figured out that we all sort of liked one another and posed the idea of a poly relationship in the first place. Mei shrugged. Yeah, I am not sure how long it would have taken for any of us to pick up on that fact with each other without him. I am better with machines than with people, and between Chance and 10 mil alone, I am not sure either of them would have asked any of us out, since Chance thought me and 10 mil were already dating, and 10 mil is just as socially oblivious as I am. Hitoshi snickered. Yeah, it is kinda obvious that all 3 of them are slightly antisocial only children from how much they can't read other people. From where I was sitting, it was all pretty obvious. Takoyami snorted. I suspect that, with the exception of Todoroki and possibly myself if you count Dark Shadow, everyone here is an only child. Todoroki, however, was giving Hitoshi an interested look. I didn't know you had siblings? Hitoshi sat up and shrugged again. I don't now. I'm adopted as an only child now, but for a good part of my early years, I was a foster kid living with other kids my age. My parents are great, but they don't exactly plan on adopting anyone else anytime soon. As it was, I was sort of an unplanned acquisition on their part. That had Izuku's full attention given his own mother's history. How could that happen? The adoption process is not exactly something you can do accidentally. Another shrug before an amused smile crept over his face. I was like my aunt's cat Sushi, a foster fail. I was only supposed to live with them for a couple of months after an incident put me in their care as an emergency foster. But by the time I was supposed to move out, we had all sort of become attached to one another. Next thing I know, I'm adopted. Izuku's eyes widened slightly as a few small things clicked. Most emergency fosters are pro-heroes. Is that why you are always hanging out on campus late? He shrugged. Yeah, I sort of live here. Well, in the staff dorm at least. In case it wasn't blatantly obvious from how easily I was able to rope him into the photoshoot, Present Mike is one of them. That is all you're getting on the matter. Though given the fact that he is married with a kid, is sort of supposed to be a secret for the sake of his public image, since his agency doesn't think he would sell as well if people knew he wasn't single. Gyro snorted. I hate that I know that would be true. For a good while my dad's agents had him hide his marriage with my mother, and that they had me for his own image, and he was just a rock star, not a pro-hero. Obviously it didn't last too long, but that is definitely a thing that would happen. Izuku narrowed his eyes slightly at Hitoshi and made a mental note to ask about that later. After all, if his theory about Mike Sensei and Aizawa Sensei was correct, it was more likely that it was being kept a secret because of the other teacher's involvement, given that he doubted the underground hero would be particularly happy about his face being blasted everywhere as the more public limelight hero present Mike's husband. That thought was interrupted by a text over the villain comm network from Aoyama. Hanged man? You and Chance are dating? When did this happen? It hasn't even been 6 hours since I last saw you all in person. Izuku winced and quickly typed a message. About 10 minutes before the first bomb went off. Sorry for the lack of warning on that for you and the rest of the team. We are in a poly relationship with Judge and Zippy, so if you want to help sow some more confusion about things with the hero team, you can mention that I am dating Zippy or something. Hanged man, copy that. I want the full story about this later though. 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗲 Ochako was shaking slightly as she sat down on the seat in an agency. Her suit still was painted in blood from the chest of the witness that she had been about to help Bakugo transport to safety and medical treatment when he had been shot. Over 1,000 dead in just minutes. Whoever the mastermind behind the villains of both classes was someone who she was uncertain she would ever be able to look in the eye and trust again. None of the villain team were. Not if they could do something like that without hesitation. The fact that they could have dreamed up something like that at all was horrifying, but the fact that they had been joking around like that after. Kirishima cursed as he struggled to connect the video call with B agency on the other side of the divide. Most of their classes were on cleanup duty still, but he had forced her to take a break as she hit quirk exhaustion point, so now she was getting to sit in with him and a few others, Ida, Bakugo and Aoyama, who had also been among the first responders to the attack, and thus witnesses to Death and Tower's little show as he talked with Kendo and the others on break about what had happened. She had lowered her head to rest on the cool metal of the table to try and will her nausea away when there was a small clink on the table in front of her, prompting her to look back up. Aoyama had set a glass of water on the table in front of her with a concerned look. Are you all right? She sighed and took the glass and quickly downed the cool water. Thanks. I've been better, but I could be worse, I guess. I think I am more in shock than anything. He fidgeted with his own glass. That is understandable. I will admit that performance of Theirs on the roof edge was a 𝐬𝐶. Quite surprising, I mean. I was not aware that any of our classmates were dating one another from the other hero class. She considered that. That's actually a good point. As far as I know, the only ones I know dating are Gyro and Yaoyorozu, and they are dating one another. He shook his head. Midoriya is also dating that support girl from the sports festival. Hatsune, I think. Regardless, I have seen them cuddling down in the support lab a few times since then. That was like an arrow through the heart. Deku has a girlfriend. Her raised voice caught the attention of the other boys at the table. Bakugo snapped fully to attention. What is this about Deku dating someone? Ochako blushed. Aoyama and I were just talking about the people in our class that are dating, so we could maybe figure out who Death and Tower are. He just said that he had seen Deku and Hatsune from the support course together before. Ida frowned. As interesting as that is, we really should not be gossiping about our classmates' love lives behind their backs, even if I do have to question our friends' taste in partners. Kirishima scratched his chin. Huh. You think that is how they got support students on their team? Bakugo, however, narrowed his eyes at Aoyama as the other boy shrugged. What the fuck were you doing hanging around the support students to even notice that? He rubbed the back of his neck as he gestured down at his belt. I was hoping to maybe see about getting a smaller belt designed to work with my quirk to wear under my casual clothes eventually once I go pro. My current one is a 𝗓𝗏 dart, a work of art, but it is also less than comfortable for wearing for a long durée, a long time that is. I couldn't help but notice our classmate was also spending time down there too. Kirishima huffed. Bakubro, Aoyama is obviously not the traitor. He was literally right there with us when everything went down. Ochako gave a small O as the real reason for their little meeting here clicked. We are all the ones 100% cleared then? Kirishima shrugged. I mean, Mina is too. It is sort of why I left her in charge of organizing the others. Plus Ojiro, since whoever Tower is, they don't have their clear mutations given they didn't have a tail or horns. I figure we can get them both up to speed after they come back though. Ida sat back in his chair. That only leaves Asui, Kaminari, Sato, Siro, and Hagakure. I would say that we could discount the possibility of the girls being Tower if it wasn't for the fact that it is possible the very male persona could have been created to throw us off their trail. Aoyama cleared his throat. Have you gotten a connection yet? Kirishima cursed and went back to messing with the computer. No, It's so weird. Every time I get a connection for a second, I get booted right off of it. Bakugo frowned and got up to shove him away from the computer. Let me see that. He furiously typed away at the computer for a bit before curing and hard shutting it down. They fucking hacked us. We need to hard restart all our systems at once to kick them out. He tapped his ear to turn on the hero comm. Hey dumbasses, we need everyone back here for a couple of minutes to reset comms. The villains are listening. He looked over at Ida. We need someone to run over to tell those idiots over in B about the hack. Ida glazed over to Kirishima for confirmation. Kirishima nodded. Follow Bakubro's lead on this. He probably knows computers better than I do. He turned to Bakugo. I think I am going to have to appoint you as the official communications officer of the agency for now. If we can clear Kaminari later, he can take over, but for now it is all you. 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗲 Yuga relaxed as he fired off another short update text from the restroom before flushing his stall toilet and stepping out to wash his hands. Somehow, despite this being a more demanding spying job than his one for all for one, it was so much easier. It was probably the fact he did not have to worry about fooling actual pro heroes like NEZU and Aizawa-sensei, but the classmates he had already been fooling for the better part of the semester already. He knew just what buttons to press and when to keep the attention off of himself for too long. He hated how naturally it all came to him at this point. The manipulation of the others. But it was what Midoriya had asked of him, so he would deliver. Maybe one day he would work up the courage to come clean with him at least and ask for help. After all, the only person he was nearly as scared of as all for one at this point was him. If Yuga had a natural talent as a spy, Midoriya had it as a villain, hands down. It was frankly unnerving how fast Midoriya had taken to thinking like one, and how naturally he wore the persona as his own. That little show on the rooftop with Monoma had made it painfully clear how comfortable he was playing villain. The sheer pressure he had given off for a few moments with just his presence was not something that could be faked. He had not been pretending in that moment. The fact he had clearly meant every single word of his little speech, which was concerning for multiple reasons. Especially given that from All for One's interest in him specifically as All Might's apparent successor, it was likely that he and Yuga shared a quirk of genetics in common. From what All for One had implied, Midoriya had been quirkless too. If he of all people went rogue with All Might's former quirk like his speech implied, he was not opposed to doing. Yuga was not sure who he would betray between the boy and the boogeyman. Perhaps, when because there was clearly not an if with Midoriya at this point, he went full villain Yuga might be able to cut a deal with him to act as the middleman between him and All for One. Or perhaps he could point the two at one another to duke it out. That might solve that problem for him at least. The door opened beside Yuga, jolting him from his thoughts. Ajiro. The other boy waved at him slightly. You good man? You have been in here a while. Yuga jerked his hands out from under the running water of the sink and turned off the tap. Désolé. Sorry. I was perdu dans ses pensées. That is lost in my own thoughts, I mean. Ajiro gave a small nod. Must have been a serious train of thought to leave you forgetting to use Japanese like that. You worried about what our villain classmates have planned. Yuga nodded. I am worried about what they said about a schedule. If that mass bombing was just their opening act, I fear what they have planned for the rest of us. That the fact that death said it was not our time to die, yet means they likely have all of our deaths planned out. The other boy shivered slightly. Oh, geez, that is an unnerving thought. So who do you think it is? Tower from our class. I am not sure. He lied. The fact that they got into our computers could point to Kaminari, but given they have Midoriya's girlfriend on the villain team, that could just be the explanation behind that. He gave the other boy a curious look. What are you doing in here anyways? You are clearly not here to use the toilet, and I never thought you to be one for gossip. He winced. No, not really. I just wanted to talk with someone about what was going on privately, and the others clearly are all busy with the girls and the boss coordinating recuse and body recovery at the site of the divide, and Ida and Bakugo working on getting communications back up to normal. You don't really think it is 𝐜𝐴𝐻, do you? That is Tower, Yuga frowned. Why? He blushed. It's just that. Well, I was hoping to ask her out at some point after this was all over. But if she is Tower, that would mean, you worry that she might already be in a relationship. He nodded. Yeah, I don't want to be that guy asking her out if she is already happy with someone else. Yuga patted him reassuringly on the shoulder. Well, if it is not her, then I wish you the best of luck, mon ami. he sighed. Now if only I could find love so easily. Ojiro gave him a smile. Oh, don't be like that. You are a pretty nice guy yourself. I'm sure if you asked you could succeed in finding someone easily enough. Is there no one from our class that you like? At least there was an easy out for this now. Yuga shrugged. No one single, I am afraid. Besides, it seems my crush favors the fairer sex after all. 'Tis life, I suppose. It took the other boy a second. Oh, would that be Midoriya or one of the girls? Midoriya. Your first assumption was the correct one. While it was obvious he was flustered by girls, I had hoped that was all there was to it. Ojiro rubbed the back of his neck and nodded. Yeah, I didn't want to assume anything, but Yuga laughed. But I am very clearly gay, he flashed a smile. Quite true. It is not like I was trying to hide it, mon ami. In fact, part of the reason I am so open about it is in the vague hope that perhaps one of our class less open about it might take the chance and try asking me out. Sadly, it hasn't worked yet, but we do have a few more years here at UA, so who knows what could change there. 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬 destruction of the fake city. Feel a growing worry for his little cousin, and a stab of guilt for so wholeheartedly agreeing with his villainous plans for the test that most would have considered a step too far. Because his plans were most certainly villainous. He found himself worriedly wondering if his encouragement had allowed little 𝐬𝐻 to go further in his plans than he ever would have on his own. If by giving the boy his stamp of approval on the plans, he had absolved the boy of the normal guilt he would have felt by going this far. There was nothing for it now, though. The wheels were in motion for some of his darker plots already, and there was little chance of them stopping now. It wasn't that he felt bad about what was to come for the boy's classmates. He was a firm believer in the thought that a good scare built character, but he was worried about the fallout the boy would eventually face for all of this in their eyes. Perhaps if it all went badly enough, then Izuku might be more inclined to step back from heroics before he permanently maimed himself, further making Atsuhiro's decision to reach out to the League to do damage control pointless in the end. Or perhaps if it goes well enough, Izuku would jump ship to make this fiction a reality. Atsuhiro was more than a little guilty of hoping that would be the case. That they could one day work together to make their great-great-grandfather's dream a reality. To make a world where the weak and poor stood on equal footing with the rich and powerful. A world without discrimination for factors beyond one's control. "Mister, you're being pretty quiet over there." Atsuhiro snapped back into focus, turning to his companion for the hero patrol watch on their next target that Izuku had posted just in case the information their spy had given them was incorrect. "Ah, my apologies, Temperance. I was merely contemplating how the next act will go." Young Todoroki cast his gaze out to the city in the direction of their soon-to-be target. "You are worried that the museum heist will not go well?" Atsuhiro shook his head. "Of course not. A robbery like that should be a walk in the park, given that the heroes have no idea it is on the list of villain goals. I highly even doubt I will require your assistance with it." "No, I was thinking about what comes after." The boy made a small noise of understanding. "You are worried about the bank robbery tomorrow with the hostages?" Atsuhiro nodded. "Yes. While I do believe myself a good actor, I worry the heroes will see through me before I can finish playing my role. If I get caught and removed from play, 𝐬𝐻 will have to skip down to Plan J for all following performances." The boy slowly nodded. "I had noticed that he was relying on you and your quirk a lot for the plans to work." Atsuhiro sighed. "As have I. I want to say it is only because my quirk is one of the more versatile ones and my identity as an actor for the game makes me moving around simpler. But I can't help but wonder if he finds the fact I am an adult a valuable fact as well. Between that and the fact I am his cousin, I suspect he trusts me to make judgment calls in a crisis when he can't himself. After all, unlike your class, 1B haven't seen real fights before." That seemed to pique his interest. "And you have?" Atsuhiro blushed slightly behind his mask, as he waved off the thought like the liar he was pointedly pretending he had not had to run from the odd hero over the past few years, when he pulled less legal jobs. "Goodness no. I am however trained in the art of escape, and can take anyone with me whether they want to come along or not." "Ah, I suppose that would be true." Atsuhiro glanced at the time on the comm. "I should probably head to position now. Wish me luck." NEZU found himself smirking into his tea. So it seemed that Sako had come to a similar conclusion to himself about Midoriya's lack of any inhibitions towards villainy. It had struck NEZU as odd at first just how aggressive for lack of a better term. Midoriya had been with his plans for the other teams. Hopefully with his realization, Sako would begin the process of reeling in the boy a bit more. After all, the true purpose of this test had shifted the moment the man had walked into his office at UA. The moment the man's distinctive scent had hit his nose. The moment he had the test results back, after a small deception on his part to trick the man into gifting him with a sample of his blood. After all, despite what even they might think, somehow Sako was blood related to both Midoriya and Shigaraki. He was not as close of a relative to be sure, but all three of them carried a distinctive hallmark on their genes that was likely shared with their one common ancestor. An ancestor whose distinctive DNA profile had been on the record long enough as a villain that the HPSC had classified it decades ago. All for one had secretly sired a child at least once. The thought of that had sent him down a rabbit hole of research into the DNA databases. After all, now that he knew the signs he should be looking for, it was only a matter of time until he got a few hits. It was much worse than he thought. He had only been expecting to find one, or maybe two others tied to the cursed lineage. He got 4 more from the Haranet database alone. 4 more and all of their descendants. Endeavor, and thus his children, including young Todoroki Shoto, who he suspected would be thrilled to know that he was likely cousins with Midoriya. His bastard half-brother Salamander, and his one known son. Shinomori Hikage, the 4th holder of one for all itself. And it clearly wasn't one for all, creating a false flag, when none of the holders after carried the marker until Midoriya. And somehow the worst discovery thus far, Sir Nightai. Sasaki Mori. It was that last part that made NEZU hold his tongue on the topic for now. After all, there was no chance that Sasaki knew any more than Midoriya did about the familial tie, even if the fact that All Might had accidentally likely chosen his former sidekick's nephew as his successor amused him greatly. He would wait to break that news after he had time to figure out how their family tree was puzzle pieced together. There had been only the one evening before the test left, and he had spent most of it making sure he had every confirmed family member of All for One compiled. For now, though, he needed to watch and learn how Sako carried himself as a full villain, and not just the thief he currently was. After all, while Midoriya was a rather low risk of joining his brother Shigaraki in following their likely great something grandfather, Sako very much was not. That being said, NEZU was hardly comfortable playing judge to the man for a crime he might never commit. Sako was clearly loyal to his cousin Midoriya, or NEZU suspected the man would have taken the opening NEZU had offered for him to bow out of joining in on the test. Additionally, there was the fact that, ultimately, Midoriya's strong sense of right and wrong had been cultivated by the man's family, and their belief that it was the job of the powerful to help those that were weak. A belief that NEZU himself did have to admit to supporting. So he would watch and wait. He just hoped that Sako would take his warning before the test seriously. 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬 in private to hear his thoughts on it. He was about to betray Atsuhiro's trust for the sake of fairness to the hero teams. For the sake of multiple optional objectives, a successful prison break, betraying a teammate, and feeding the heroes false information about an upcoming plan. As far as Atsuhiro knew, they were planning on combining the hostage situation's objectives with the bank robbery objectives. But they weren't. No, the hostages would be collected and dealt with later, as would the bank when there would be few heroes to interfere. As far as Atsuhiro knew, Izuku was working towards the goal of completing all the objectives by the third day. That wasn't the plan. Doing that would have never given all his teammates their time in the spotlight after all. Izuku checked that his voice modulator was on the right setting one last time as he picked up the payphone off the hook and punched in the hero line emergency number. 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍. Ochako picked the phone up off the hook before it could ring for a second time. The phones had been ringing off the hook since they had gotten into the test site, but aside from the bombing earlier, which they had not even needed people calling in to report, most of the calls had been pretty minor stuff. Someone reporting directly about finding new Hands of Fate graffiti on the back of their building when they took out the trash. People asking for help with directions or reporting someone they thought looked sort of suspicious looking. The police forwarding a case report to them when they linked a minor crime with a rising villain group. Agency, how can I help? That is why you couldn't blame her for being surprised when the smooth, deep voice of the tower came from the other line. 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗏. So lovely to hear your voice. I was just calling to inform you that we have a robbery in progress at the museum. I believe that Tailman and Chargebolt should be patrolling nearby. Perhaps you should send them that. Why? Ochako's mouth went dry. Still, she didn't freeze up and immediately not only set out the alert over the network about the possible robbery in progress with a note that it might be a trap and started the phone trace. Okay, she could do this. She just needed to keep the tower talking. Easy. He or maybe she liked the sound of their modulated voice clearly. Why are you telling us this? Isn't ratting out your teammate sort of counterproductive? Ahem. True, but this way is more fun. And more fair to you heroes, I suppose. Magician is far too experienced a player in these games to stay in permanently. Consider his capture as an offer of goodwill of free hero points. I hardly wish to make a real enemy of our class after all. Oh. She wasn't sure what to think of that. So you are definitely the one of villain team leader. Another hum of confirmation. I have the team leader card around here somewhere. Yes. Who? And spoil the surprise? Where would be the fun in that? Ochako felt a spike of irritation. What? Is this all just fun and games to you? You bombed 2 blocks over nearly a kilometer. Killed thousands just like that. There was a pause. Uraraka, you do know this is a game, right? The lilting cadence was gone. The act momentarily dropped. Ochako didn't care though. Still, how could something like that be okay with you? You are supposed to be a future hero. How am I supposed to trust anyone who could look at that level of destruction as okay? A slow exhale of breath. Oh, I see why Aizawa-sensei is so against this test now for our year. There was a bitter-sounding laugh. Well, I guess the next couple of years are going to suck. It was nice talking with you all the same. WGO, that was a punch to the gut. Izuku dropped the phone onto the hook before taking a shaky breath and resting his face up against the cold metal of the booth. He couldn't stay here long. Uraraka was smart enough to realize that she should be tracing the call. Still, the words she had said were bouncing around his skull on repeat. He gave a broken sob as he found himself falling to curl up in the bottom of the booth, ripping the mask and balaclava off his face. He couldn't stay there though. He couldn't bring himself to leave though. His worst fear about the test had come true, and he hadn't even gotten to the really bad part of his plan yet. He had lost one of his best friends at UA. A crackle of static came from his ear. 10 mil, where are you? No one can find you anywhere at base. Are you getting up to some mischief without us? Izuku wanted to reply back, but his throat clamped down on his voice like a vice. All that came out was a broken keening noise. Shit. Okay, 10 mil, give me a second to locate your earpiece. Ah, got it. You're not far from where Snipe Jr. is perched to keep a lookout. I'm sending him to come to get you, okay? As May kept babbling over the line, Izuku felt the air get knocked out of him as a new realization hit him. One that he should have had a while ago. His teammates were his friends too. They had been worried about him. They were worried about him. He closed his eyes and let the sound of his girlfriend's voice wash over him. It would be okay. He would be okay. Because they were also here in the same boat with him. Except unlike him and Nito, all of them chose to be here with them. Back on that first day of the test introduction, Uraraka had clearly never considered that the villain team leader would be him. She had not even considered waiting to find out what the villain team would be like, and had just written it off. Ida, he had understood, as the other boy had explained, after his own near stint in murder in his brother's honor. It made sense why he would be reluctant to join the team. Add that to the fact that he had previously chosen to not team with Izuku back during the sports festival, and Izuku was not terribly surprised. It was that latter bit that made him so sad though. Not because of Ida, but because, despite being all in on working with her friends for the festival, she chose not to when it frankly mattered more. He was still curled up struggling to breathe when he felt a hand on his back that began to rub small circles. It's okay, Kira. Just breathe, Midoriya. In 1 2 3 4 and out 1 2 3 4. May's voice cut off in his ear to the sound of the other female voice. Female, meaning not Shuburaba who she had sent. Froppy had found him. It took a few more rounds of her counting his breaths to get him out of the clear panic attack that he had just had. Thank you Aizawa-sensei for making sure everyone in the class knew how to help with those after the UST for him to quite register that she was there, and he wasn't wearing his mask. He blinked at her. Sue, she gave a soft smile. Are you okay now, Midoriya? Yeah. He winced at the voice crack, but she didn't comment on it. Don't worry about having to run. I told the others on my team that you, Tower that is, had already run. No need to rush yourself, Kiro. Izuku stared at her slightly bewildered. Why? She shrugged. Because it seemed like the right thing to do. It would hardly be fair if you lost because 𝗂𝗧𝗏 gave you a panic attack. Consider it just a timeout, Kiro. Izuku, however, felt something click into place in his head. The one optional objective that neither he nor Nito had thought feasible to do. Tsu? Why did you not consider joining the villain team at all? She tilted her head in thought. I had assumed that since both 𝗂𝗧𝗏 and Ida were already signed up for the hero team that you and Todoroki would as well. That, and to help keep Mayuta in check. But you already handled that for me and the other girls, Kiro. Thanks for that, Kiro. I suppose the fact you joined the villain team makes more sense now. You didn't have a say in the matter. Izuku grimaced. Mine and Atsuhiro's great-great-grandfather was the peerless thief. The main reason NEZU is having us do this test sooner than in other years is because he was concerned about what would happen with me when the commission found out that my mom's foster family is still very much considered our family despite them never bothering to fully adopt her. I suppose that makes sense. If they consider you a risk of going villain, having a record of what you are like when acting in the role makes some sense, Kiro. Izuku bit his lip. Tsu, would you like to join the villain team? She tilted her head again. Is that even allowed? Izuku licked his lips. No going back now. It is one of the villain team's optional objectives. Convert a full hero at the start of the game into a villain team member. I think it is how spies on the other team are normally planted if there are no heroes dealt the traitor role. She seemed to consider that. So you do already have a spy in the hero, Kiro. We weren't exactly planning on hiding that fact. Not with our spy not at risk of being found anytime soon. She nodded. So you don't want me on your team to be a spy, Kiro? Why risk asking me? Izuku gave her a smile. Because you are not only my friend, but you risked your grade to help me with my panic attack. That earned a smile in return. Okay, I'll join. Just one thing first though. I heard that you were dating Hatsune from 1H, but also that you as the tower were flirting with death. Izuku snickered at the look she gave of disbelief as what she said seemed to hit her. Wait, was the flirting with death thing a joke? For the pun, Kiro? Izuku laughed. No actually, I hadn't even realized I had done that. No, Hatsune and I are in a poly relationship with Shinso from 1C and the 1B villain team leader. You will have to wait on that though. I would rather not say who it is out in the open like this. She stood back up and held out a hand to pull Izuku up to his feet before reaching down to pick up the mask and balaclava. Well, then lead the way, Kiro. Tsu was pretty sure she was a pretty unflappable person. Still, the sight of Monoma from 1B rushing across the room in the villain hideout to tackle Midoriya in a hug caught her slightly off guard. At Midoriya's sheepish look at her in response, she just stared back. Midoriya, I am not sure if I am more puzzled by the choice or the fact that you somehow managed to keep him from outing himself as the villain team B leader more. Hey, Atsuhiro was not 100% sure what had happened, even if he had a pretty good guess. Even if Izu didn't know it, he knew all the villain's objectives thanks to NEZU. Izuku had sacrificed him for the sake of optional points. He wasn't sure if he was more proud or puzzled by the choice. Well, at least it went a long way in explaining why little Izu was using him so much on the first day. He was getting as much mileage out of having Atsuhiro around as he could before he betrayed him. Yeah, he was definitely proud of his blossoming little villain cousin. Izu was definitely unnatural at this. Still, it had taken restraint on Atsuhiro's part to not just escape when he realized what was going on. The fact that all of this would be recorded for posterity later had him holding back from showing all of his tricks. After all, if he were to be grabbed by a hero in real life, he would very much rather be able to escape than not. A rapping of knuckles on the metal table draws him from his thoughts. Red Riot and little Katsuki. If he had to guess from Katsuki's temper, it would be a case of good cop, bad cop. He gave the latter a wide smile. Ah, Katsuki, I haven't seen you in person since you were still a toddler. How are you? That seemed to completely unbalance them. Katsuki though was quick to recover though and slammed his sparking palms on the table. What the fuck are you talking about, villain? Atsuhiro cocked his head slightly. Are we playing it that way? Shame. I had hoped to catch up with you since I haven't seen you since I last babysat little Izu. I've not had the chance to visit you and your family with all the prep work for this event going on. I suppose we can talk later. Red Riot was quick to hold up a hand to stop Katsuki from snapping at him again. So you are Midoriya's cousin then, he flashed a smile. Guilty as charged there. I have been enjoying the chance to catch up. It is not often my schedule has lined up with both Izu's or anti-Inko's at the same time. Katsuki pushed the other boy's hand away. So you're the magician, right? Atsuhiro shrugged. I mostly go by Mr. Compress, but yes, that is my title among the hands of fate. Why do you ask? Then you know who the rest of the mystery fuckers are on the team. But of course. There was a pause as the pair of boys stared him down. Oh, were you expecting me to reveal them to you? I am afraid I will have to pass on that. My loyalty is to Izu, and therefore his teammates. Katsuki ground his teeth, but Red Riot gave him a sympathetic look. Even though they clearly betrayed you, Tower called us to tip us off. He hummed in agreement. Yes, well, the fact that my backup failed to back me up was a rather large clue. Still, I am not surprised that it happened, just that it happened so soon. Most of the villain team didn't seem to think my being on their actual team as fair for all of you, so removing the temptation to keep using me for their plans was rather inevitable. Plus, I suspect removing me, so that Zippy couldn't get back into the support lab that Power Loader set up for her during the test was probably an intentional choice, given that she is apparently inclined to the use real explosives in her fake explosives. He cocked his head as that statement he had not thought of before it was leaving his mouth rang true. Actually, I am starting to think that might have been the main reason. Zippy is Midoriya's girlfriend, right? Well, if you are asking that, then I suppose there is little harm in confirming it. Young Hatsume is really quite the terrifying young woman. Which knowing Auntie might explain the appeal to Izu. Atsuhiro was amused as a flicker of grief of all things flashed over Katsuki's face. Shit, now that you point that out, I can't unsee it. Fuck, he and the crazy support chick are probably in it for the long haul, huh? I am not looking forward to seeing the little monsters that the two of them might produce. Red Riot looked sort of lost at that. Bakubro, why do you say that? Midoriya's like one of the nicest guys in our class. That earned a laugh from both Atsuhiro and Katsuki. Where the fuck have you been? Did you completely miss his fight with Isahad, or the fact he tried to punch Shigaraki in the face? Deku is fucking unhinged. Atsuhiro snickered as he nodded. I do have to admit that about him, at least, as much as I love him to bits. He might not look like it, but his first instinct when being held by someone when he does not want to be is to bite them as hard as he can. The only reason I came away from babysitting him for years unscathed is that we were able to convince him to stop doing that was because we told him that heroes don't bite people. And don't get me started on him and quirks. If I have learned one rule about him, is you do not get between him and a cool new quirk. Red Riot looked positively dumbstruck. There was a knock on the door before 𝐬𝐬 stuck her head in. Red Riot, sir. Maybe I should take over. Neither of you seem to be getting much of anywhere, for all that he is saying. Besides, you need to issue a public statement about Mr. Compress's arrest. Ah, right. Bakubro, do you think you could? Katsuki grabbed him by the shoulder and started to steer him out. I am not fucking talking to the reporters for you. I'll help you write up your statement, but the rest is on you. After the door snapped shut, the happy smiley face on 𝐬𝐬 was gone. When she spoke, it was short and clipped. Right? You are going to tell me everything you know. 𝗬𝗲. When Ochako snapped the door to the jail cells closed, she had to force herself to take a calming breath. Right. We have a potential hostage situation and a chance to maybe catch Deku, so we can talk. She slapped her cheeks. I can do this. I can do this. With that, she squared her shoulders and began the hunt to find Kirishima to give her report of what she had learned.